99 quantum theories that quietly undo the real world to fall asleep to. What if the universe doesn't exist the way you think it does? Not because it's wrong, but because it's too quiet to notice. Somewhere between the tick of a clock and the thought that follows, quantum theories whisper their rebellion, not with explosions or certainty, but with questions so soft they undo the very ground beneath your beliefs. Is your reflection real, or just a probability wave collapsing into place? Does time move forward, or does it dance in loops, folding memories into illusions? Are you a conscious mind, or a quantum echo dreaming of form? In this video, we won't scream the answers. We'll drift with the questions. Through 99 quiet theories, entanglements, paradoxes, forgotten constants, we'll peel back the surface of reality with a feather, not a scalpel. So take a breath, unclench your thoughts, let go of needing to solve anything, and allow yourself to gently fall into the quiet undoing of the real world. The door that opens both ways. You're standing at a doorway, not quite in, not quite out. The air is still, like a thought that hasn't fully formed. And for a moment, just a moment, you sense it. The threshold between one version of reality and another. The place where certainty loosens, like a dream unweaving at dawn. A man in line at a corner cafe turns to his friend and murmurs, "Do you ever feel like reality only becomes solid because we expect it to?" His friend chuckles, not dismissively, but with a quiet curiosity. Or maybe it's only polite enough to wait until we're looking. At the heart of the quantum world, things are not where they seem. Or rather, they're not anywhere until we look. A particle, until observed, behaves like a wave, spread out, unsure of itself. It's not that it hides exactly. It just waits, like a note unsung or a shadow without a source. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles act like they're everywhere at once until someone watches. Then, suddenly, they choose. They collapse into being, as if the universe doesn't perform its play unless it senses an audience. But the strangeness isn't just in the particles, it's in the role we play when we look. If observation changes the outcome, then the observer, the one who sees, is not just a spectator, but a participant, an accomplice to the unfolding of reality. So, what does that make you? In a laundry room lit by a flickering bulb, someone asks, "Have you ever noticed your socks only vanish when you expect them not to?" There's a pause. Or maybe they vanish when you're too distracted to prove otherwise. Small jokes, maybe. But wrapped inside them is a soft question we all carry. What is real when no one's watching? And if watching shapes what's real, what happens when we stop? Close your eyes here just for a second. Not to sleep yet, but to feel the texture of the question. Reality, perhaps, isn't a solid wall, but a shifting mist that tightens only under your gaze. It isn't about what is, but what responds. You are not outside the system. You are the gaze that bends its rules. A person waiting at a train platform watches the shadows ripple across the concrete. No one speaks. And then quietly they say, "Sometimes I wonder if the world holds its breath until I look away." Let's stay here a little longer, right here, at the doorway where things become real only when called. At the soft line between what is and what might have been had no one looked. There's no need to solve it. Just let it settle in the air around you. And now, gently, we begin to ask, if observation chooses one outcome, what happens to the other one? The one that didn't get picked? The one that split silently into a world just beyond the door? The mirror that multiplies. She asked him softly, "Do you ever think about all the versions of you that could have existed if you'd just made a different choice?" He looked down at his coffee, the steam swirling like timelines. "Sometimes, like, what if I never moved to this city? What if I never met you?" That's the quiet terror of the many worlds interpretation, not the grand explosions of science fiction, but the gentle fracture of your own path into 1,000 unseen mirrors. Every blink, breath, or silence could be the fork that splits the world in two. You turned left, but somewhere, someone wearing your face turned right. Somewhere, they said yes. Somewhere, they said nothing. Quantum physics, in its most provocative whisper, tells us this isn't poetry. It's structure. According to Hugh Everett's theory, every quantum decision doesn't collapse into one outcome, but instead unfolds all of them at once in parallel realities. These realities don't erase the ones that don't happen. They multiply. Which means right now, there could be a version of you who never watched this video. One who became a painter. One who disappeared quietly into the woods. One who never doubted themselves. One who always did. But if you can imagine that many yous exist, walking, dreaming, regretting, then a stranger question emerges. Who is the real one? You might say, it's me, the one feeling this moment. But that's just one thread. If every version of you believes it is the real one, then what anchors you in this particular life, this quiet second before sleep? It's not a question that invites panic. In fact, it's oddly comforting. Because even in the worlds where you fell, someone else within you stood. Even in the timelines where you were late, another you arrived just in time. Somewhere you were brave. Somewhere you forgave yourself. He looked up from the coffee. So, all those versions, do they mean I'm less real? She shook her head gently. Number just that you're not alone, not even in your own skin. And perhaps that's the deeper miracle. Not that we are singular, but that we are layered. A prism of selves refracted through time, each step taken birthing another. You, as you are now, are simply the part that noticed, the awareness within the storm of choices. So rest easy tonight. There is no perfect version of you, no single thread that wins, just the soft unfolding of what is and the quiet hum of what might have been. And if your identity is only a strand in an endless braid, woven through possibilities, tugged by decisions both made and missed, what happens when strands cross, knot, or fade? Let's follow the next thread. Entanglement's whisper. There are moments when you feel someone's presence before they arrive, when your phone buzzes and it's the exact person you were just thinking of. These things are small, like wind brushing past your collarbone, but they tug at something deeper, as if some invisible thread vibrates between you and them, no matter the distance. Late one evening, two strangers wait at a bus stop. One quietly says, "I don't know why, but I feel like I've met you before." The other smiles, unsure whether to answer or to just nod gently. Nothing more is said, but the silence settles between them, not like emptiness, but like understanding. As if somewhere in the spaces between stars, their atoms once danced in the same rhythm. Quantum entanglement is not a metaphor. It's real, measurable, and stubborn. When two particles are entangled, no matter how far apart, altering one instantaneously alters the other. Einstein hated it. He called it spooky action at a distance. But maybe, like most things that frighten us, it simply refused to follow the rules we'd written down. It's as though the universe has its own language, one that speaks in pulses instead of paragraphs. And sometimes it whispers this: you were never separate to begin with. A man once told his daughter that he could always feel her thinking about him. She thought it was superstition, until the day he called just seconds after she had a nightmare and said, "I don't know why, but I woke up worried about you." Maybe it's not just particles that can be entangled. Maybe minds, too, resonate. Perhaps the reason a song reminds you of someone is not just memory, but a kind of quantum signature, like a bell struck far away that still makes your bones vibrate. What if intuition is a kind of quantum echo? Not magic, not fantasy, just a trace of a link still humming quietly beneath consciousness. Even love in this light becomes something else. Not a chemical reaction, not just neurons firing, but a pattern, shared, across time, across light years. You love not because you chose to, but because you were always already connected. And if you close your eyes now, and someone you care for crosses your mind, perhaps that's not a thought. Perhaps that's them, reaching through whatever fabric holds us all. As the night folds in around your breath, feel that. Not an answer, but a presence. We drift now toward uncertainty, not to escape, not to resolve, but to rest inside it, to float where even the smallest vibration might be a message, because even in this deep quiet, the rules still whisper. Even in the dark, something listens. The rule of uncertainty. Late at night, when everything slows but never truly stops, there is a peculiar hush that settles over the world, a moment where you're neither fully awake nor quite dreaming. In that gentle pause, something flickers at the edge of knowing. You try to hold it, whatever it is, but the tighter you grip, the more it slips away. That's not a failure of focus. That's the nature of reality itself. Heisenberg once proposed something quietly radical. The closer we look, the less we see. Not because we're inattentive, but because the universe is built that way. Try to know exactly where a particle is, and you lose its momentum. Try to trace its motion precisely, and its position dissolves into blur. It's not a trick. It's a boundary, a truth stitched into the fabric of the cosmos. "So wait," says a soft voice, maybe yours, maybe someone beside you in thought. "You're telling me the universe won't let us know two simple things at the same time?" The other voice chuckles gently, the way an old friend might in a candlelit room. Not two simple things, just the wrong pair of things. That same uncertainty spills quietly into life. The more you try to define who you are, by title, by habit, by name, the more you pin yourself down. And in doing so, you forget the fluidity, the forward motion, the possibility that maybe you are still becoming. Like a particle caught in observation, the act of watching ourselves too closely can trap us, solidify us. And sometimes, stillness is a kind of prison. Think of all the times you've said, "I am this," or "I am not that." Each declaration was a door closed to some alternate version of yourself. You chose clarity and lost motion. You chose stillness and forfeited becoming. What if that's okay? What if identity doesn't have to be a fixed point, but a shimmering probability? Always somewhere between here and becoming? There's a strange peace in surrendering to this, not in giving up, but in letting go of the need to know everything at once. You don't have to hold the whole picture. You can live in the in-between. You can breathe between questions. And that voice returns again, more like a murmur this time. "So I don't need to decide right now?" "No," the answer comes, wrapped in calm. "You only need to be near enough to yourself. Uncertainty, then, isn't absence. It's permission to shift, to soften, to remain unresolved, to be both particle and wave, presence and direction, question and answer. In a world that begs for certainty, maybe the quietest rebellion is to remain undefined, because what's undefined can still be whole. And now, let's drift gently, between boundaries, between moments, where the next paradox waits, not to be solved, but simply to be noticed. The observer's paradox. There's a strange kind of quiet that settles over a room when you stop trying to understand it. Like the stillness that arrives only when you stop watching the clock, or the warmth that appears in a conversation once both people stop performing. A woman in a linen jacket, standing at a crosswalk, turned to the man beside her and said, "I always get green lights when I stop caring if I'm late." He laughed, not at her, but in recognition. That odd magic when you realize reality seems to behave differently when you're not scrutinizing it. In quantum mechanics, this isn't just poetic, it's foundational. The observer effect tells us that the very act of measuring a particle changes its state. Electrons don't have fixed positions until someone looks. Before that moment, they drift as waves of probability, potential waiting to become particular. But what about your thoughts, your emotions, your memories? Close your eyes and try to catch a thought mid-formation. It vanishes, doesn't it? The sharper your focus, the more it dissolves, like mist touched by light. The mind isn't a cabinet of fixed facts. It's more like a pool disturbed by your gaze. You stare, it ripples, you rest, and only then does something surface. Two friends walking after dinner. One says softly, "When I stopped trying to figure out why I'm always sad at night, the sadness became something else. Not gone, just less sharp." Observation doesn't just reveal, it shapes, and too much of it, especially when aimed inward, can crystallize things that were never meant to harden. A passing worry becomes an identity, a fleeting insecurity, a story, a moment of pain, a lifelong rule. But if you step back, if you soften your gaze, you let the mind remain fluid. Possibility stays alive. There is a kind of truth that doesn't bloom under inspection. It unfolds in the quiet, like a flower at night, unbothered by witnesses. So ask yourself gently, are you over-observing your own experience? Is your effort to define things keeping them from becoming real in a deeper way? Another voice in a bookstore aisle, half whispered, "I kept a journal every day until I realized I was writing how I should feel, not how I did. So now I don't write, I just sit." There's wisdom in not naming the feeling too fast, in letting thoughts drift through the room like incense smoke, faint, real, and impermanent. Because maybe you're not here to pin everything down. Maybe you're just here to witness. And if so, then release the need to collapse the moment into meaning. Let the probabilities remain open. Let the thoughts stay soft. Now breathe and notice what you're not trying to notice. That space behind the words. That stillness before meaning. That's where rest lives. Let's stay there for a while, where nothing has to make sense yet, and that's quietly enough. The quantum Zeno paradox. There's a peculiar stillness that settles in when you watch a thing too intently, like staring at the sky, waiting for a star to move, only to feel time suspend itself between your blinks. The quantum world has a name for this, the quantum Zeno effect. It tells us that in certain conditions, simply observing a system too often can prevent it from evolving. The act of checking disturbs the process. Like hovering over bread dough in the oven, opening the door every second, so often that it never quite rises, never quite becomes. But here's the quiet twist. This isn't just physics. It's something we do every day in quieter, more emotional ways. A young woman sits by the window, journaling her every decision, every slip-up, every should have. Her pen scratches like a metronome of self-measurement, checking if she's healed yet, if she's enough yet. And a voice beside her, gentle, honest, asks, "Do you ever feel like watching your progress is what's slowing it down?" She pauses. "All the time," she says. "It's like, if I don't track it, I fear I'll drift. But the more I watch it, the less it moves." Her friend nods, gazing into their tea. Sometimes the way forward isn't by checking, it's by trusting. Just as particles don't like being pinned down, maybe neither do we. We interrupt our own becoming by measuring it too often. We peek into the oven of our own soul too many times, hoping for proof of change, but end up resetting the heat. We analyze our relationships until we forget to feel them. We check our mental health so obsessively that growth retreats like a shy animal sensing it's being watched. The paradox is that attention can become interference. Awareness, when hyper-focused, can turn into resistance. We halt the flow by fearing its direction. Even love can be frozen when we ask, too often, "Is it still there?" So what would it mean to stop observing for a while? To trust that transformation is happening beneath the surface, even if unseen. To let the bread rise, the scar heal, the heart unfold, without needing proof every second? There's a different kind of courage in stepping back, in allowing yourself to change without surveillance, in quieting the internal observer who insists on progress reports every moment. Let that observer rest now. Let your thoughts flow without catching them. Let your growth happen quietly, without your flashlight shining in its face. Just breathe. Just be. Because sometimes the most powerful movement is what happens when you stop trying to make it move. Schrödinger's Midnight. Some nights, you lie in bed not knowing if you're tired or simply paused, like a song waiting for someone to press play. The stillness doesn't mean nothing's happening. It just means no one's looking. That moment between drifting off and staying awake, that's your box. And you, tonight, are Schrödinger's soul. The thought experiment is deceptively simple. A cat in a box. Poison triggered by a quantum event. Until the box is opened, the cat is both alive and dead. Not in metaphor, in mathematics. This isn't a lesson about animals or cruelty or logic puzzles. It's about something quieter, something human. The idea that reality itself might be waiting for you to pay attention before it finishes becoming real. A voice in the hallway says, "Are you still up?" You say, "I don't know. I might be." And both answers are true. You haven't looked yet. You haven't measured your state. This paradox sits at the intersection of observation and existence. When no one is watching, reality doesn't choose. It floats. It hesitates. It holds its breath, which means some part of you might still be waiting to be noticed. The part that only emerges when a certain gaze meets it. The version of you that writes late into the night, or sings in empty rooms, or believes in love when no one's listening. Maybe we carry unopened versions of ourselves like sealed letters in our pockets, timelines we've never read. And maybe they don't vanish. They wait. In a laundromat at 2 a.m., a woman looks up from her book and says to the man across from her, "You know, I wasn't sure I was even here until you said hello." He smiles and folds a warm towel. "I wasn't sure either," he replies. "You don't always need to be witnessed to exist. But sometimes, being seen is what allows one version of you to bloom while the others quietly sleep." So here's the quiet question tucked into the folds of the night. What unopened box of yourself are you avoiding? What part of you is both hopeful and hesitant, waiting behind a metaphorical lid? Because consciousness, like that cat, isn't just presence, it's potential. A layered maybe. A flickering filament not yet resolved into one shape or another. You are not fixed. You are not even fully formed. You are a probability field walking around in soft skin, and in that uncertainty, there's peace. You don't have to decide who you are right now. You can drift. You can glow dimly in possibility. A whisper across the kitchen table. Do you think if we'd made a different choice, we'd be living a different life right now? A gentle laugh, tired but real. We already are. Somewhere. So tonight, let the box remain closed a little longer. Let the quantum fog cradle your thoughts like clouds across a moonless sky. Maybe the version of you that's resting peacefully isn't far away. Maybe, in fact, they're already here, just not yet observed. And as this thought settles, so do you. Loosened, softened, undefined, but not incomplete. Let's follow that unmeasured thread to where your body knows it's time to let go, to where uncertainty becomes rest. Somewhere in the box, a version of you sleeps, and they're dreaming softly now. Quantum tunneling, through the wall. You sit in your room, still and quiet. The night feels like it's wrapped in velvet, pressing gently against your skin. You feel blocked by doubt, by fear, by a future that won't open its door. But then, what if that door was never really locked? What if the walls we think are real were only ever suggestions? In the strange world of quantum mechanics, there's a phenomenon so quietly disobedient, it sounds like fiction: quantum tunneling. A particle, tiny, insistent, encounters a barrier that, by all classical logic, it shouldn't be able to cross. But it does. Not by jumping over it, not by breaking it. It simply appears on the other side, as though reality blinked and forgot the rule. This isn't superstition, it's probability. A wave function, not bound to a single point, spreads out, some of it leaking into the forbidden zone. And suddenly, improbability becomes fact, a miracle written in the language of statistics. So you're telling me, a woman asks in a voice both skeptical and curious, that something can pass through a wall just because the math says it might? Her friend replies softly, not just might. Does. Not every time, but enough to matter. Enough to change the shape of what we think is possible. A silence follows, not of disbelief, but of a quiet internal shift. Something about it feels human. How many times have we stood in front of a wall, mental, emotional, existential, and believed it absolute? How often have we accepted immobility as fate? But what if the sensation of being stuck is just the moment before the tunneling? What if your soul already slipped past the blockage, and the rest of you, your doubts, your fears, your identity, is just catching up? You can be here, still, silent, and yet already beyond. Because movement doesn't always require motion. Because some of the deepest transformations don't come with noise. The tunnel may be invisible, but it's there, in every moment when you keep going without knowing how. When the universe opens not with a bang, but with a breath. And that breath too might be you, passing through. So close your eyes, not to escape, but to soften the walls. Let them fade at the edges. You are not waiting to break through. You are already arriving. And in this arrival, stillness is not the end. It's the gentle tunnel beneath the surface, carrying you forward, quietly, impossibly, faithfully. the collapse that waits for you. There's a moment, soft and small, that happens before you speak, when you almost say yes, almost say no, when you're halfway through opening the door, not sure if you should stay or go. That pause, so fleeting most days, is everything, because in that sliver of indecision, the world still hasn't happened yet. Quantum physicists have a word for this: wave function, not a thing, but a field of maybes. Before anything becomes a fact, it exists as possibility, pure, untouched, waiting. And then, you look, you decide. And just like that, all the other outcomes vanish. You collapse the infinite into one. But that's only physics, right? A man says this softly as he adjusts the sleeves of his coat. The woman beside him doesn't answer immediately. She watches the traffic light blink yellow, then red. Is it? She replies. Or is it just choice in disguise? Because maybe we've misunderstood decision-making. Maybe a choice isn't just about selecting from a shelf of pre-made options. Maybe every yes, every no is a small act of reality building. Not picking from the world, but making it. Think about it. You only feel certainty after the fact. Before you commit, before you say, "This is what I want," there's only potential. The job you didn't apply for. The message you drafted but never sent. The version of yourself that stayed 5 more minutes or left 5 too soon. It's not that one is better. It's that neither was real until you picked one. The collapse is not just out there on the chalkboards of physicists. It happens every time you take a step forward and realize the path you now stand on is the only one that could ever have been. Every other version dissolved like sugar in warm water. Have you ever sat still so long you forget what you were about to decide? He smiles, half embarrassed. All the time, she answers, but maybe that's where the magic hides. This isn't about regret or pressure. It's about tenderness, about knowing that you don't have to rush the collapse. You don't have to solidify everything at once. Let your life breathe. Let the maybes echo a little longer, because before it's real, it's free. Let the air hang heavy with undone possibilities. Not indecision, invitation, not delay, depth. You are not late. You are exactly where you need to be, in that quiet space just before the world becomes one thing. And as we rest here, on the edge of all potential, the next thought begins to stir, quietly, impossibly. What if time itself never moves? Unless you believe it does, stay close. We're about to find out. The illusion of now. There's something peculiar about the word now. It feels concrete, like a stone you can hold in your palm. But try to grasp it, and it's gone. By the time you say the word, the moment has already passed. So was now ever real, or just a shimmer of attention pretending to be time? One evening, while washing dishes, a woman asked her partner, "Do you think we ever really live in the present?" He dried his hands and leaned against the counter. "I think by the time we notice it, it's already memory." She smiled. "So are we just ghosts, remembering the moment we were alive in?" He laughed softly. "Or maybe we never left. Maybe this is all memory pretending to be movement." In physics, the idea of now isn't as simple as a ticking clock. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, simultaneity, the idea that 2 events can happen at the same time for everyone, is a myth. 2 people traveling at different speeds or in different gravitational fields will each experience their own version of time. Your now is not my now. In the language of spacetime, there is no universal present. There are only coordinates stitched into the fabric of a four-dimensional tapestry. Quantum theory further dissolves the illusion. Many physicists argue that time is not even fundamental, that it's emergent, arising from changes in quantum states rather than existing as an independent thread. In some interpretations, the universe doesn't move through time. It just is, a complete, timeless configuration where what we call past, present, and future are just ways of looking at different layers of the same whole. So if time is not ticking, if now is not a point but a perspective, then what happens when you dwell on the past or fear what's to come? Maybe your mind isn't traveling forward or backward. Maybe it's simply shifting its gaze, like light sliding across a painting, illuminating one region, then another. You are not moving through time. You are swimming through attention. A child once asked his grandfather, "Where does the moment go when it's gone?" The old man paused, then whispered, "It doesn't go anywhere. It just opens a door to the next one." The boy blinked. "So are all the moments still here?" The man nodded. "Somewhere behind your breath, they're waiting. So breathe. Let go of the seconds, the schedule, the narrative that says you are running out of time. The truth may be far stranger and far gentler. Time might not be something you move through. It might be something that moves within you. The ticking is not the truth. It's just the frame around your focus. In the space between seconds, there is a silence. And in that silence, you might finally feel the truth. Now was never something to catch. It was always where you already were. The delayed choice. It's late. The kind of late that hums in your bones, and somehow the world feels softer now, quieter, like it's waiting for you to say something first. But what if the world is waiting for you to choose first? There's a strange experiment in quantum physics, something subtle but unsettling, the delayed choice quantum eraser. It starts simple. Light goes through slits, like shadows playing tag with probability. But then, something changes. You check the result after it happens, and your act of observing seems to reach backward in time, as if, by paying attention now, you rewrite what was, not just how you interpret the past, but the past itself. Two people sit on a quiet bench in the dimness of a train platform. One looks up and says softly, "So you think what we decide now can reach back?" The other smiles, not in certainty but comfort. "I think maybe the past waits to see who you become before it settles into place. And isn't that what memory sometimes feels like? You return to an old wound, but tonight, it aches less. Not because it changed, but because you did. You see it differently. Softer, more human, less final. You once thought your decisions were ink, permanent, unerasable. But maybe they're breath. Maybe they wait to dry until you decide what they mean. Somewhere in the quiet, domestic space between midnight tea and undone laundry, someone picks up a photo they've avoided for years. Their thumb lingers not on the face but the background, light coming in from a window. They whisper, not knowing who hears, "I didn't notice that before." Maybe it wasn't always like that, but maybe it was. Or maybe that memory just waited for you to be ready. Regret, then, might be a kind of illusion, like blaming a dream for not ending well. If the past adjusts itself to the lens of the present, then to heal is not to forget, but to re-see, with gentler eyes, with new colors. Because quantum theory doesn't say time runs backward. It says time listens, that the path a particle takes is shaped not only by where it starts, but by where it ends. And in that whisper of logic, your own story unfolds differently, less like a timeline, more like a poem being rewritten every time you read it aloud. So if you've ever wished you could go back, maybe in some impossible quiet way you already have, every choice you make now ripples backward, not with force, but with meaning. Close your eyes just for a breath. Let go of the version of you who thought it was too late. Let them drift. Let them rest. Because if the story is still unfolding, then you are still the author. And if the pages behind you aren't fully dry, maybe tonight is when they soften, not erased, but reinterpreted by the one who lived through it all. You. The night holds no judgment, only space, and the past, like the present, might still be listening. The quantum no-cloning theorem. What if no version of you could ever truly return? Not because you forgot, not because you changed, but because nature, at its deepest level, never allows it. In the world of quantum mechanics, the no-cloning theorem tells us something humbling. If you don't fully know a quantum state, you cannot copy it. Not even the universe itself can make two perfect duplicates of the same mystery. You can entangle, you can transform, you can measure, but you cannot clone. Wait, seriously? Yeah, it's not just impractical, it's literally forbidden. Even if I try again and again, if you don't know what you're copying down to its tiniest detail, the copy can never match. There's a strange comfort in that. Every quantum state is singular. Every flicker of energy, every possibility stands alone, like snowflakes falling into a dimension where mirrors refuse to reflect perfectly. And if that's true for particles, what does it mean for people? That memory you try to relive, no matter how vivid, how sacred, won't ever land the same way again. That conversation you rehearse in your head, hoping to say it better this time. It's already vanished into a configuration the cosmos won't replicate. That version of you who stood at the crossroads, unsure whether to speak or stay silent, was a one-time constellation. Gone. Not lost, just irreproducible. Doesn't that make everything more fragile? Maybe. Or more precious. Because here's the paradox that softens even the hardest regret. If you can't repeat who you were, then maybe you don't have to. If every version of you is unique, then there's no such thing as failing to be yourself. You always are, even when you stumble, even when you don't understand your own reasons. Quantum physics doesn't just tell us how particles behave. It whispers that identity isn't a loop. It's a one-way bloom, a momentary pulse of light, uncopyable even by the universe itself. So what happens when we finally stop trying to reproduce our best selves and start honoring them, brief, shining, real, as they were? Do you think I'll ever be that version of me again? But you'll be another one, equally impossible, equally yours. And so, as the thoughts slow and the heart softens, let this truth cradle you like a lullaby. There is no template, no second take. You are the original. In the next breath, we'll drift toward a question just as curious. If the universe can't clone your state, could it rewind it? Could it ever go backward, not in memory, but in reality? Let that thought flicker gently in your chest, and exhale. The moment is here, for the only time. The Irreversible Dance. There's a moment, quiet and quick, when you drop something fragile, maybe a glass, maybe a truth you weren't ready for, and no matter how fast your hands move, the shatter comes first. That's the rhythm of this world. One way, forward, irreversible. But if the laws of physics allow time to go both ways, someone once asked at a laundromat, folding a towel like a slow ritual, why does it only go forward for us? The man across from her didn't answer immediately. He just glanced down at the socks he was trying to match and said softly, "Maybe we only remember the mess, not the order." Quantum physics doesn't care which direction time moves. The equations, neat as polished tiles, work just as well backward. But life doesn't. You don't unburn toast. You don't unsay the thing you said when you were tired or scared or too honest. That's entropy, the quiet drift toward disorder. Not a flaw, but a feature, not punishment. Just the tax we pay to keep moving. Think of the past as a tidy drawer, neatly folded stories, labeled emotions, everything in its place. But the future? It's a room mid-rearrangement, drawers yanked open, clothes tossed on the floor. That's not chaos, it's change. Transformation never looks clean. A boy once whispered this to his sister as they waited for the bus in the rain, their shoes soaked and schoolbooks damp. Maybe we're supposed to get messy before we get better. Entropy rises. That's not theory, it's lived. The more you experience, the more tangled it gets. Memories layered with what you hoped would happen, what actually did, what you're still not sure how to name. You grow not in order, but in the dance between cracks, between what held and what fell apart. And still, we try to rewind, recreate. We scroll through old messages. We revisit old houses. We rehearse moments we never quite got right. But the past doesn't sit behind us like scenery. It exists in how we retell it. It lives in the way our voice catches, not the facts. A woman once asked her friend, sitting on a bench with city noise behind them, "Do you ever wish you could go back to who you were before?" The friend tilted her head and said, "Not really. She wouldn't have understood this version of me." So, maybe we stop chasing the reversal. Maybe we stop fearing the blur. If time's arrow pierces only forward, let it mark the direction of becoming, not loss. Let disorder become your collaborator, not your curse. Let the broken glass on the floor be proof that you held something. Let the mess in your life be evidence that you are mid-transformation, not stuck, not ruined, just rearranged. And if your mind drifts now, if sleep takes your hand gently, that's okay. You don't need to follow the story. You are the story. And the next part is still unwritten. In the next breath, we'll wonder, if we can't rewind, can we ever truly pause? Or is stillness just another way forward? The measurement problem. It's late. A streetlight hums outside the window. The world, for a moment, is still, until the question quietly arrives. How do we know something is there before we look? In quantum mechanics, the measurement problem isn't about tools or instruments. It's a riddle wrapped in silence. Particles don't seem to choose a definite state until someone or something checks. Before that, they're smeared across all possibilities, like whispers of potential. So what counts as a measurement? A Geiger counter, a digital camera, or a human mind asking, what's real? This is where things slip from science into soft mystery. Because if consciousness, your awareness, collapses the fog into form, then your act of noticing may be the act of making. The moon becomes not just a rock in the sky, but a suggestion suspended until confirmed. And if it's not looked at, if it's never questioned, does it ever arrive fully? Two voices drift in a dim room. "Hey," one says, eyes half closed. "Do you think the fridge light stays on when the door's shut?" The other chuckles softly. "Only if you need it to. Maybe it's off. Maybe it's not decided yet." There's a pause. than a quiet murmur. What else haven't we decided into being? The measurement problem suggests that observation might be participation, not just witnessing a universe already made, but collaborating in one that's unfinished until you arrive. Like a story waiting for someone to read the next page before the ink settles. And maybe your presence, your noticing, is the moment the cosmos agrees. Yes, let's be this one. So what about facts? What about the truths you thought were fixed? Your name, your past, your future plans. Are those just memories collapsed from options you once had? Are they stable? Or only because you've looked at them long enough to keep them still? There's something strangely tender in this. The idea that your attention has power, that your gaze might bring shape to what was shapeless, that you're not just passing through this world, but shaping it with each quiet glance, not in grand, magical ways, but in the way you choose to see someone, the way you frame a day, the way you say yes to a moment, and it becomes yours. So close your eyes gently, not to escape, but to soften the grip of certainty. Let yourself feel how even the idea of fact flickers. The moon may not vanish when you're not looking, but maybe, just maybe, it shines a little differently depending on who's watching. And now, as the thought dissolves like vapor, let us drift forward. Because if observation is creation, then what happens when we stop observing ourselves? What is a self that isn't always looked at? We're about to ask. Quantum identity crisis. There's a quiet moment when you ask yourself, not with urgency, but with genuine curiosity, who or what am I? It's not always a question you need answered. Sometimes it's enough just to let it hum softly in the background, like a familiar melody you can't quite name. A man on the subway once turned to his friend and said, "I feel like I'm not the same person after lunch." His friend chuckled and replied, "Well, technically, your molecules agree." They laughed, but beneath the joke, there was a strange truth vibrating beneath their words. According to quantum field theory, you're not a solid, fixed thing. You're not a statue in time. You're a disturbance, a ripple, a traveling wave moving through the vast, unseen field of existence. The particles that make you, your eyes, your breath, the thoughts that drift in just before sleep, are not particles at all in the classical sense. They're tiny excitations, blips in an underlying ocean that never stills. You weren't born in one piece. You were assembled by pattern, maintained by rhythm, held together not by glue but by memory. And even that is fluid. So when you think of the you from yesterday, remember, they didn't disappear. They shimmered, a burst of meaning, a shape in the waves. They broke down in the car or smiled at someone who needed it or stayed silent during an argument. That was a version of you, a quantum shape, and now that shape echoes. Not in the past, not in some distant memory, but in the folds of your nervous system, your gait, your preferences, your poetry. Someone once asked softly at a park bench, "Do you think people ever change?" The reply came slowly, eyes on the trees. Maybe we don't change. Maybe we flow. That's the secret quantum fields whisper. You're not a noun. You're a verb. You're not being. You're becoming. Again and again, moment by moment, you're vibrating differently in response to everything you touch and are touched by. That's why the voice in your head sounds different at night. Why the words you said this morning don't quite feel like yours anymore. Why even your name, spoken aloud in a quiet room, can sound unfamiliar. But this isn't a crisis. It's a quiet liberation. You're not required to stay the same. There's no original version to live up to. You're not meant to hold one shape forever. You are waves in motion, and motion itself is your identity. And so, if you feel fragmented tonight, that's okay. There's no you to return to. There's only the ongoing wave, changing, responding, echoing. You've never been lost. You've only been moving. Close your eyes gently. Rest in that shimmer, that echo, that rhythm of you. In the next soft breath, we'll ask another question that doesn't need an answer. What if reality itself is just a story told in bits of information? The code beneath the cosmos, a soft hum beneath the stars. Have you ever wondered if what you see is not solid but scripted? Long after the last email has been read and the final message of the day vanishes into silence, your eyes rest against the ceiling, or maybe the void, and a quiet question surfaces. What if the world isn't made of things, but of code? Not the mechanical kind, no blinking lights or buzzing circuits, but something quieter, stranger. A logic that doesn't feel like logic at all. A whisper between particles, more like poetry than programming. And in this midnight softness, you begin to listen. Do you think the universe feels us thinking about it? I don't know. Maybe it's not feeling us. Maybe it is us. There's a growing belief among physicists, philosophers, and restless minds that reality isn't made of matter at all. Not atoms, not fields, not even time. Just bits, binary events. On and off. Yes and no. What we call a particle might simply be a flicker in a field of information. A data point whose meaning only arises when read by something or someone. In this view, the entire cosmos becomes something like a vast quantum program, not run on a computer, but existing as computation itself. Space isn't a stage. It's part of the code. Time isn't a river. It's a protocol. You aren't walking through reality. You are embedded in the algorithm, a subroutine of the great unknown. Consciousness? That might be the decoder, the part that watches, waits, and collapses potential into something felt. Then, does that mean my mind is somewhere outside my brain? Maybe your brain's just the screen. The mind could be the network. It's a strange comfort, isn't it? That your thoughts might not be isolated echoes trapped inside a skull, but quantum threads stretching across reality. Your memories might be less like files and more like frequencies. Your feelings, waves encoded in the very logic of the cosmos, waiting to be tuned into. Every dream, a shared moment with something beyond form. Every choice, a function calling out to be resolved. And if all things are data, then perhaps we are not here to build meaning, but to read it, to interpret the living story that already hums beneath existence. You're not writing the script. You're reading it line by line, breath by breath. And maybe, just maybe, your awareness is the cursor. Where it rests, the universe appears. Do you think it ever stops running? I think it's always running. We just fall asleep between the lines. So tonight, rest your thoughts on that idea. The code doesn't sleep, but it does grow quiet. And in that quiet, it's waiting for you. You, the listener. You, the reader. Not to control it, just to notice. Just to be there. And now, in the stillness, what will you choose to hear next? The holographic shadow. Could the universe be only skin deep? You've likely felt it before, walking into a place that feels thick with memory, as though the walls remember more than you do. But what if those walls, the space you stand in, even the body you inhabit, aren't what they seem? There's a theory quietly nested in the minds of physicists that says what feels like volume might only be surface, that everything you touch has been projected from a layer thinner than thought. It's called the holographic principle, and it whispers that all the information of this universe might be written not in the space around you, but on its boundaries, like a movie cast onto fog, or a pearl grown around nothing. That chair, this room, even your heartbeat, it could all be encoded in the margins, playing back a story to something outside. Two people linger in the soft silence of a quiet night cafe. One stirs their tea, watching the steam spiral. The other taps their fingers on the glass. "You ever get that feeling?" one says. "Like you're being watched, but kindly?" The other nods, not with suspicion, but something gentler. Maybe that's just us, watching ourselves from the edge. And suddenly, your whole sense of inner changes. If space is an illusion of depth, what about emotion, memory? Could they be surface ripples, coded in a field you can't name, but always feel? There's a kind of calm in this idea, a subtle surrender, because maybe not everything needs to be dug through or peeled apart. Maybe some things don't deepen when you search them, but settle when you stop. You are not hollow. You're not shallow either. You are reflected, a mirage that thinks, a thought that glows. You don't have to be less real just because you're light, folded. So the next time a moment feels too fleeting to be true, consider, maybe what makes it beautiful is that it only exists on the skin of time, like laughter echoing in a tunnel that was never there. A stranger once walked beside you on a bridge and said something that didn't quite make sense at the time. You nodded anyway, and you still think of it sometimes, though you forgot their face. Maybe they were part of your edge. Maybe that's where the script was written. And if depth is illusion, then falling doesn't always lead somewhere darker. Sometimes you stop falling not because you hit bottom, but because you remembered how to float. Let's stay suspended here a moment longer, in this hush. Let's let the next idea rise like a shimmer from water, not to explain, but to glow. Superposition of selves. There's a strange kind of comfort in not needing to be just one thing, not needing to decide or define or hold yourself to a single self. Just for now, as the night deepens and the breath softens, ask, can two versions of you exist in the same breath? In the quantum world, this isn't metaphor, it's mechanics. Superposition is the quiet rule that says, until measured, a particle can be many things at once, not here or there, but here and there, a flicker in probability, a chord held between keys. Only when you look, only when the world asks you to choose, does the wave collapse and a single state emerge. Until then, it is both real and not yet real. So what about you? Maybe the version of you who forgave today still lingers beside the one who couldn't let go. Maybe the part of you that dreams of new beginnings is quietly standing next to the one that's still nursing an old ending. There's the version of you who is resting right now, barely holding on to these words. And then, next to them, is the version still wide-eyed with wonder, still asking why. Do you ever feel like you're many people at once? One voice says quietly in the dark. Yeah, like I'm carrying a whole crowd inside. Some of them don't even know each other. The other replies, there's a pause, just breathing. Is that bad? The first voice asks. No, the second answers. I think it's just being. Quantum theory doesn't resolve into simplicity. It expands into acceptance. It tells us there's nothing broken about occupying more than one state. It tells us that uncertainty is not failure, it's form. Superposition isn't a glitch in the code. It is the code. You don't need to settle into one story before sleep comes. You don't need to conclude. Tonight, let all the possible yous, the tired one, the curious one, the healing one, hover together in quiet grace. Maybe you are not the outcome, but the overlap, not the final note, but the resonance, a field of selves suspended in a breath neither forced nor finalized. There is no need to collapse the wave tonight. Let them all breathe in unison. Let them all listen together. The superposition holds, and in its hush, you are whole. The vacuum that boils. Sometimes, when the world grows quiet, when the lights are out and your breath is the only rhythm left, you might think you've entered a kind of nothingness, a still void where thought, sound, and meaning fall away. But that stillness isn't as empty as it seems. In quantum field theory, even the deepest vacuum, the so-called nothing, is not truly void. Beneath that silence, fluctuations stir. Particles blink in and out of existence like ghost breaths. Energy hums behind the veil, whispering that even when everything appears to pause, something stirs beneath the pause. Nothing is ever truly nothing. Hey, someone might say in the middle of a shared silence, not quite ready to break it, but needing to check if you're still there. Do you feel that? Like, even when we're not talking, something's happening. And maybe you both nod, not at each other, but towards something deeper, an unspoken current running beneath the room, beneath thought, beneath time. Because you've felt it too, haven't you? That strange pulse in a quiet moment, when you're staring out a window, not thinking, but also not thinking. Something inside rearranges itself without your permission. The silence becomes a workshop. Stillness begins to shimmer. That's not your mind playing tricks. That's the quantum vacuum in metaphor. A place where stillness is actually seething with potential. A brew of almost realities. Nothing, it turns out, is a bit too busy to be truly nothing. This is why rest doesn't mean absence. Why taking a breath isn't about stopping, but listening to the buzz between thoughts, to the particles of self that reassemble in your pause. There's so much happening in your stillness, not visible, not nameable, but real. Like when you sit next to someone and no words pass, yet something important is exchanged. The kind of moment you don't write down, but remember anyway. Your body knows, your breath knows. Even if your mind stays quiet, something within reorganizes. And so those nights when you feel empty, you're not. You're boiling at a level too deep to see. You don't have to stir to be stirring. You don't have to move to be moved. Even if the world has pressed pause on you, there's a slow shimmer happening inside. So let the silence hum now. Let it do its work. Because silence, too, moves. And as you drift toward the next breath, you're not leaving yourself behind. You're arriving at what's always been quietly becoming. Decoherence and the fall. When exactly does wonder settle into certainty? When does possibility give way to predictability? You may not notice it, but there's a silent shift that happens, not just in atoms, but in us. Physicists call it decoherence. It's not dramatic. There's no bang or collapse you can hear. It's quiet, like fog lifting from a dream. So slow, so invisible, you might mistake it for growing up. In the realm of quantum physics, a system can exist in many possible states all at once. A particle isn't just here or there. It's here and there until it's measured, until the outside world interferes. That's decoherence. It's what happens when the quantum realm is touched by noise, by heat, by life. The mystery retreats, and what was once fluid becomes fixed. Superpositions vanish. The wild possibilities collapse into one single, seemingly normal reality. And maybe that's not just physics. Maybe it's a metaphor hiding in plain sight. Because don't we too begin as something undecided? A child doesn't yet know who they are. They can be anything. They are joy and sadness, scientist and dancer, lion and leaf. They flicker like possibilities not yet observed, but slowly the world watches. And in that watching, we begin to settle. The roles become more solid. You're the responsible one, the anxious one, the fixer, the failure, the achiever, the daughter, the caretaker, the one who doesn't cry in public, the one who always says yes. Do you ever feel like you didn't choose the person you've become? Yeah, she says. Sometimes I think I just collapsed into it, like it was easier than holding everything at once. Maybe you didn't fall. Maybe you decohered. But there's something else, something soft and still humming underneath. Because even in decoherence, traces remain. The system doesn't forget its quantum roots, it just hides them. And maybe you haven't forgotten either. That flicker in your chest when a song from childhood plays. The way your body still knows how to dance when no one is watching. That moment before sleep, when your mind drifts out of definition and you remember what it felt like not to be one thing. Do you think we can return to that? To what? To being undefined? He pauses. Maybe not all the time, but maybe at night, in silence. We loosen. So tonight, we press pause. Not forever, just for now. You don't have to be your job, your decisions, your patterns. You don't need to be someone already understood. Let the roles soften. Let the particles drift. You were once the sum of infinite versions. Maybe you still are. And in this quiet hour, where no one is watching, no one is measuring, and no expectation is demanding that you perform, maybe your quantum self returns, if only for a while. Let it flicker. Let it be. Reality's error-correcting code. There's a quiet kind of beauty in the way the universe breaks and mends itself. Beneath the flicker of stars and the silence between seconds, there is a rhythm. A hum that doesn't just generate the cosmos, it repairs it. In the world of quantum physics, there's a principle known as quantum error correction. It sounds clinical, abstract, but what it really means is that even when reality falters, when chaos slips through the cracks, the deeper structure, the invisible architecture, knows how to rewrite the glitch, not erase it, but fold it gently back into the pattern. It's like watching waves smooth over a footprint in the sand, not because they're told to, but because it's in their nature to do so. Two friends sit quietly on a bench near a fountain. One speaks without turning his head. Ever get the feeling like you're being reassembled in real time? Not changed, not healed, but remembered? Like you were always whole and just forgot? The other smiles softly. Yeah, like the pieces of me know where they go, even if I don't. And maybe that's the secret. Maybe the wounds aren't errors. They're just noise in the signal. Your anxiety, a temporary static. Your regrets, a brief distortion in a larger wave that never lost its shape. Quantum error correction doesn't fight entropy head-on. It dances with it. It doesn't prevent mistakes. It makes them irrelevant. Like a song that keeps playing, even if a few notes go missing. Your deeper self, too, might be like that, woven with redundancies, not flaws. Built to bend, but not break. The whispers in your mind that say, "You're not enough," just noise. And your breath, the one you're taking right now, is the code checking itself again, softly, silently, correcting the lie. A woman walks past a locked door and hesitates. She doesn't knock, she doesn't try the handle. She simply says aloud to no one, "I don't think I need permission anymore." And somehow, it feels like the door heard her. So maybe healing isn't an act of triumph, but of recognition. Not adding something new, but decoding what was always there beneath the interference. A return, not a change. A remembering, not a redoing. And when you feel like everything is coming undone, what if it's actually coming together beneath the surface, just in a pattern too vast for your conscious mind to perceive? Like a net catching you mid-fall, spun from threads you didn't know were still intact. Pause. Inhale slowly. Let the exhale carry away a fraction of the static. You don't need to fix everything tonight. You don't need to make sense of every error. The system is still running. The music hasn't stopped. And in the deep, behind your thoughts, your code still sings. Quantum immortality. What if the silence after death isn't an ending, but a turn in the corridor? There's a strange, soft idea in quantum thought called quantum immortality. It doesn't shout, it hums. It says, when you die in one reality, your consciousness may simply slide into another version where you survived. The bullet misses, the car swerves, the tumor vanishes, and from your perspective, you never die. It isn't a claim of eternity. It's not a mystical promise. It's just a logical extension of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, a view where every possibility branches into its own unfolding universe. Every decision, every accident, every breath. You might vanish from others' stories, but from within your own, the story never stops. It's unsettling, comforting, both. "You're saying I live forever?" someone asks in the quiet. "No," the other replies, pausing. "But maybe you never experience not living." And suddenly the shape of your life shifts. The stakes don't disappear. They stretch. Because if your awareness is always moving through the thread where you go on, then this version of you, this breath, this choice, this quiet moment, is part of a line that never quite ends. What would you do differently if you knew you couldn't escape yourself? If every moment mattered not because it's your last, but because it's part of an unfolding that never halts? It changes how regret feels, how risk feels, because even failure folds into the version of you who still got up the next day. There's no final crash from your point of view, only detours. You don't watch the curtain fall. You simply find yourself blinking into another scene. Some physicists reject this idea. Others hesitate, unsure how to disprove a theory you could never personally falsify. But maybe it doesn't need to be true in a literal sense. Maybe what matters is what it opens in us. The notion that your story is not a straight line toward an endpoint, but a woven path where awareness keeps walking. You mean, I'll always keep going? Maybe. Or maybe you just always feel like you are. And now, you're here, in the version of the universe where you're listening, the one where your consciousness didn't blink out, but lingered, long enough to hear this. So we follow the thread further, not to chase immortality, but to meet ourselves again, quietly, patiently, in the next breath. Let's stay in this thread a little longer. The noise that creates. There's a hum in everything, even now. Beneath the silence of this room, below your thoughts, beneath your name. A low pulse, almost nothing, like static between the stations. It's not here to interrupt. It's here because nothing ever begins in silence. The universe didn't. They say it started in chaos, not order, not logic, but a fluctuation so small it wouldn't even count as a breath. A tiny twitch in the fabric of nothing. That tremor, what scientists call a quantum fluctuation, wasn't a mistake. It was the origin, the accident that was necessary, the noise that built the galaxies. Not a plan, a pulse. Does that mean randomness creates everything? She asked it like she was just musing, waiting for her tea to steep. He looked up from the other side of the kitchen counter. Not randomness, he said. Just a kind of freedom so wide, it looks like noise to us. That word, noise, usually means error, confusion, something to remove. But in quantum mechanics, noise is fertile. It's what seeded the galaxies. It's what gave birth to space itself. There was no symmetry at first, no balance, just vibration, becoming shape. So maybe your scattered thoughts tonight aren't a problem to solve. Maybe your feelings that come in waves aren't flaws. Maybe that messy day you just had isn't evidence of failure, but of formation, of forming, reforming, becoming. She once told me after a hard week, I feel like I'm falling apart. I didn't offer advice. I didn't say anything clever. I just said, maybe this is the sound of rearranging. And we both sat there, softer than before. Isn't it strange how we assume that calm is the origin of things? That to create, we need silence first. But silence is what comes later. After the shape emerges, after the dust settles, creation, at its heart, begins with noise, the clatter before the clarity. And so, if your mind is noisy tonight, let it be. Don't push it into silence. That's not its job right now. Let the mental flickers rise and fall. Let the thoughts stretch into odd angles. Let the worries stumble and echo. Not because they're true, but because they're part of the rearrangement, the remix before the form. You're not unraveling. You're just loosening old threads that no longer hold the right shape. Chaos is the gap where the pattern will return, a little different, a little closer to truth. And in the middle of it, somewhere quiet, there's that note, that still note, the one tone that doesn't change, even when everything else does. You may not hear it yet, but it's been there the whole time. Not hidden, not waiting, just steady. The kind of steady that doesn't demand your attention, but welcomes it whenever you're ready. Let the noise keep going. Let it do its work. And if you fall asleep somewhere in the middle, you'll be falling into the very place where everything begins. The particle that knows itself. It's a soft thought at first, almost shy. What if the tiniest fragments of the universe remember, not in the way we remember birthdays or breakups, but in the way a lake remembers every pebble that's touched its surface, ripples nested within ripples. In quantum experiments like the delayed choice quantum eraser, particles appear to behave differently depending on whether information about their path could be known. As if, in the absence of an observer, the particle still holds onto a whisper of its past. Not quite awareness, but also not quite forgetfulness. Wait, someone might ask on a late walk, are you saying particles have memory? Not like we do. The reply comes, but maybe they respond to context. Maybe they retain something of where they've been. A quiet pause, the kind only night understands. Because in that pause, something unspoken stirs. The idea that memory isn't just locked inside skulls or encoded on hard drives or even passed down in genetics. What if memory lives in the folds of time itself, in the way photons bend through a slit differently depending on what else is watching, what else is possible, what else was? And maybe that's why some places feel heavy, why certain objects carry presence. A shirt that smells like someone you lost, a song that stirs your chest before your mind remembers the words. Maybe memory is not something we own, but something we bathe in. A field we walk through, barefoot, unaware it's sticking to us. Do you think the universe remembers us? The question comes again, this time softer, sleepier, and perhaps the most honest reply is not yes or no, but a story. A story of how even after the wave collapses, the imprint remains, in the data, in the field, in the next outcome, the way a choice leaves fingerprints on the future. So if particles hold echoes of where they've been, then so do you. Even in your stillness, even in your silence, your presence ripples through the fabric of things, not loudly, but lastingly. Let this hold you tonight. If you've ever feared vanishing, understand this. The quietest parts of you are not gone. They are embedded, not erased. Somewhere, the world remembers that you were here, that you shimmered, that you moved through this dimension with a signature only you could make. Let your breath soften now. You don't have to try to leave a mark. You already have. Let's follow that warmth, gently, into the next fold of the dream. The universe without laws. Sometimes the world feels too structured, too set in stone, as if the rules were carved into the beginning of time, and you are just learning to obey them. But what if even the universe is still learning how to be? There's a quiet theory whispered among physicists, subtle as breath against a mirror, that the laws of physics might not be laws at all, not mandates written into spacetime's bones, but habits, patterns the cosmos picked up, repeated, and wore into itself like soft trails through tall grass. Gravity didn't command. It just kept happening. Two people sit on a bench waiting for the last bus. One says, "You ever think the reason things fall is just because they've always done that?" The other shrugs, watches a leaf spiral down. Then maybe they could stop. One day. They both laugh, but not because it's funny, because it's quietly possible. We've been told the universe is a machine, that it runs on laws, unchangeable, infallible, cold. But if those laws are just grooves in a cosmic record, then maybe they're not sacred. Maybe they skip. Maybe the song changes. And if the universe is improvising, feeling out its own melody across galaxies, what does that say about your limits? The stories you tell yourself? Maybe the things you think are just how you are only habits too. Thought loops worn smooth with repetition, like gravity, but personal. You've said it before. I'm not good at this, or I never finish what I start. But maybe that's not law. Maybe it's just something that kept happening. And now, tonight, you're sitting here, listening. That already breaks the pattern. In the same way that particles don't follow straight lines, neither do you. You curve, you twist, you change under observation. You surprise even yourself. Someone in a cafe glances at the barista and says softly, "Sorry, I always forget my loyalty card." The barista smiles, stamps it anyway. That's okay, this time's different. Tiny moments like these tell a deeper story, that repetition can be rewritten, that a break in the groove isn't an error, it's jazz. And so, if causality is just a rhythm, then tonight you're invited to sway differently, to step off beat, to listen not for the pattern, but for the silence beneath it. That's where freedom waits. The stars don't follow rules, they shimmer. Oceans don't obey, they respond. And you, maybe you don't need to fix yourself. Maybe you just need to loosen the script. Let go of what you thought had to be. No law holds you now, only possibility. And if the universe is still learning how to dance, then maybe tonight you can take the next step. Virtual particles and vanishing matter. A whisper stirs in the quiet, almost too faint to notice. A breath of thought that barely forms before it dissolves. You've had these moments, a feeling with no language, a sense that flickers and fades before it can be shaped. But what if those moments weren't empty? In the deep silence between atoms, the vacuum isn't still. It seethes, not with noise, but with possibility. According to quantum field theory, even nothing is alive, with tension, with chance, with particles that come into being and vanish in the blink of physics. These are virtual particles, not seen, not measurable in the classical sense, but their presence is felt. They nudge electrons, they shape the vacuum itself, they alter paths, they leave no footprints, only pressure. A couple lies in bed, their eyes open in the dark. "Do you ever get that strange feeling?" she whispers, "that a thought just passed through you, but you couldn't catch it?" He pauses. "Yeah, like a memory I never had. It comes, tingles, and disappears." She smiles. Maybe that's just thinking, before it knows it's thinking. And perhaps it is. Maybe the thoughts that never crystallize are like these quantum visitors, virtual particles of the mind. They don't stay. They don't name themselves. But they matter. They shift something in your mood, in your day, in your direction. Just as virtual particles bend the rules of forces ever so slightly, maybe your mind's half-born thoughts steer you without you ever realizing it. Even silence has movement. Even absence has form. The vacuum is not void. It hums. Your mind does the same. In this night, as your body stills and your thoughts loosen, there are wisps dancing at the edge of attention. Not yet ideas, not yet anything. But they are there, moving like quantum ghosts between neurons. You won't remember them, but they might remember you by changing what comes next. A soft thought passes, brief and invisible, yet somehow it touches you. You don't have to catch every idea. Some are meant to pass. Some are meant to leave a trace without ever being known. So rest now. The next thought is already on its way. Even if you never name it, it's already shaping you. Quantum causality loops. There's a strange kind of peace that settles in when you stop needing the past to make perfect sense. Not because it does, but because you start sensing that maybe it doesn't matter in the way you thought. What if your future feelings can touch your earlier self? What if regret isn't just a shadow from behind, but a signal sent ahead, reshaped by who you are now? Quantum physicists whisper about something called retrocausality, a possibility where effects might nudge their own causes, where what happens next can ripple backward. It sounds like a contradiction. But so does the idea that particles can be entangled across time, not just space. And yet, that's what some interpretations suggest. The cause doesn't always precede. The arrow of time can double back. Causality becomes a loop, a story that edits itself with each new sentence. So wait, someone asks, walking beside you as the city quiets down. Are you saying something I do tonight could change the way I remember last week? You nod, slowly. Maybe not the memory itself, but the weight of it, the meaning, the chapter title. And they smile, half joking, half wistful. Then maybe I'll forgive someone before I sleep, just in case it rewrites the ending. It's not about changing facts, it's about changing where the facts land inside you. That apology you finally spoke out loud, it might not only heal the one who hears it, it might reach back to soothe the version of you who swallowed it years ago, who wished they had the courage, who went to bed with a sore throat, not from illness, but from words held too tightly. If the mind is a field of probabilities, always collapsing into stories, then maybe healing travels in loops. You don't just grieve in one direction. You don't just move forward through meaning. You revisit. You revise. You feel again, not to relive, but to soften the angle. And if the universe allows loops like that, maybe we do too. A note passed from your tomorrow self might be waiting somewhere in your present pocket. It doesn't shout. It just hums. You're going to be okay. I'm already there. At the checkout line, a stranger gently gestures for you to go ahead. No explanation, just a warm glance. You nod, surprised by how meaningful it feels. You want to say thank you, but instead, you feel it. Deep down, like you've been given permission for something older than this moment. What if closure isn't something you find by looking back? What if it unfolds the moment you stop demanding the past to explain itself? Sometimes just choosing peace now is enough to echo backwards into the cracks where you once broke. And as your breath slows, gently trailing into the hush of night, you don't have to make sense of every loop. Just rest in the knowing that time might be more compassionate than linear. We'll continue soon. But if you sleep here, know this. Not all loops are traps. Some are circles of release. The space-time that twists. There's something soothing in not moving in a straight line. Some part of you already knows. Life doesn't flow like a ruler's edge. It bends, it slips, it curves where you least expect. Just like space-time itself. Einstein told us that gravity isn't a force pulling you down. It's a warping of the space you walk through. Mass bends space-time like a heavy hand pressing into silk. But deeper still, beneath the folds of relativity, quantum theories whisper of more violent, more subtle possibilities. That space and time might not only bend, but twist. That reality itself could ripple like a soft thread, caught in a knot, looping, tangling, swallowing its own shape. You hear words like singularity, wormhole, loop quantum gravity, and they sound far away, like science fiction murmured in a half-dream. But tonight, they aren't far. They're metaphors waiting in your breath. You think healing is always a straight path? She asked that question softly, pulling the blanket a little tighter under her chin. He exhaled with a tired smile. I used to. I thought you moved forward, one good habit at a time, and eventually things smooth out. But what if it spirals? She whispered. What if you return to old pains just to understand them from a new angle? Then maybe I was never going backward, he said, watching the ceiling, just following a curve I didn't know was there. And there it is, that quiet revelation, like the subtle shift of a dream as you slip deeper into rest. If space-time can fold in on itself, if the very geometry of the universe refuses to obey straight lines, then maybe the heart follows the same rules. Maybe memory curls back, not to trap you, but to deepen its lesson. Maybe the days you thought were regressions were just turns in the spiral towards something lighter. Quantum gravity suggests a space-time that isn't smooth but granular, stitched together like a cosmic fabric woven from Planck-length loops. Perhaps your story is made the same way, stitched from paradoxes, curved by the weight of experience, twisted just enough to surprise you with grace when you least expect it. The shortest distance between 2 points might not be a line. It could be a fold, a doorway, a moment of surrender that loops you right back to the truth you first forgot. So if tonight you find yourself circling a thought, revisiting a feeling, don't resist it. Follow the spiral. That curve you're on, it's not a detour, it's design. You're moving closer to stillness, even if the path winds. And somewhere, in that twist of thought and time, you begin to rest. The Quantum Cheshire Cat. There's a kind of silence that isn't empty. It's full of something that used to be there. A warmth in the hallway after someone has walked by. A seat that still feels occupied, even when it isn't. The way some places remember you, even after you forget them. Hey, was that your laugh just now? No, I haven't said a word in minutes. Oh, I could have sworn it was you. That feeling, that strange echo of presence without the person? That's where we begin tonight. In a curious quantum experiment, physicists observed something so strange it sounds like a trick. A particle went one way, but its properties, its spin, its polarization, went another. Like a smile walking out the door before the face that made it. They called it the Quantum Cheshire Cat, after the grinning feline in Alice in Wonderland, who disappears but leaves his grin behind. Because what else can you call a world where things detach from themselves? And it's not just a quirky physics story. It's an invitation to question how we see ourselves. How much of you is where you are, and how much is where you've been? Your voice might linger in someone's memory long after your words are forgotten. Your kindness might still be holding a door open somewhere. Do you remember that guy who helped us with the flat tire? Not really, just his hands, and how calm he was. Yeah, that stayed. We tend to think identity is a solid object, something singular and self-contained. But what if it's more like a trail? What if who you are isn't confined to one body, one place, or one moment? What if you're not the cat, but the grin? Maybe you've left behind laughter in an old room. Maybe your courage is still echoing in a friend's chest. Maybe your absence has shape. And this isn't just metaphor. In a quantum sense, the particle's self became separated from its attributes, which raises a quiet, eerie question. If something can be here, while what defines it is elsewhere, then where are you really? Have you ever walked into a space and felt strange, like part of you is already there waiting? Or talked to someone who reminded you of yourself in a way you couldn't explain? Is it weird that I feel like I've already met you? I was about to say the same thing. The lines blur between presence and memory, between identity and influence, between now and then. So if the world can smile without a mouth and whisper without a voice, maybe there are versions of you still flickering softly through the lives you've touched. You don't need to reclaim them. Just know they're there. A shimmer in the corner of someone's eye. A comfort that has no name. And now, as you breathe into this moment, feel the pieces of you that stretch beyond your body. The warmth you've given. The stillness you've shared. You are more than your location. You are the field that remains. Let that settle. You were here, and something stayed. Let's follow what stayed into the next still place. The path without a traveler. You've probably heard someone whisper in a tired voice, "I don't even know where I'm going anymore." And maybe you've said it too, during one of those long nights when the silence feels heavier than your own thoughts. But what if the deeper truth is that you were never going anywhere to begin with? Not in the way you've been taught to believe. In quantum theory, particularly through Feynman's path integral formulation, particles don't travel from point A to point B in the neat, logical line we imagine. Instead, they explore every possible route at once, diverging, spiraling, curving through all potential realities simultaneously. They are not confined to a single story. They move without ever fully settling into being in the way we expect. Movement here is not about motion through time and space. It's about possibility brushing against existence. It's a strange thing to consider, that even when you're sitting still, even when your plans fall through and you feel stuck, a part of you may still be walking countless invisible paths, that the decisions you don't make, the roads you don't take, and the lives you don't live still echo softly across the landscape of what might have been. There's a gentle beauty in that uncertainty, because it means you're not lost, you're vast. You're the quiet center where all versions of your life converge, flickering like shadows under candlelight. You're not on a journey. You are the junction where journeys bloom. You don't move forward or backward. You shift inward. Two voices pass in the dark, barely audible under the hush of a night fan. Do you ever feel like nothing's changing, like you're just circling the same spot? Maybe. But what if we've misunderstood motion? What if we're not supposed to be moving in a straight line? Then how do we know we're not just stuck? Because we're becoming. And becoming doesn't always look like movement. You see, sometimes the next step doesn't carry you to a new city, a new job, a new chapter. Sometimes it carries you deeper into the present moment, where every potential future already hums beneath your feet. The traveler might be gone, dissolved into uncertainty, but the path remains, infinite, layered, waiting to be seen in a different light. So close your eyes now. Let your breath follow the shape of all the journeys that never needed you to arrive. There is a stillness in knowing you were never incomplete. The stories will come. The stories will go. But tonight, you rest where all stories begin, at the center of all the paths you've never needed to walk. The silent spin. Some movements are invisible, not because they don't exist, but because they never needed to be loud. They don't knock. They hum, like a thought turning quietly inward, like breath pausing, not because it forgot, but because it remembered stillness. In the world of quantum physics, electrons are said to have spin, but if you're picturing them twirling like dancers in a spotlight, that's not quite right. There's no axis, no blur of motion, no edges flung outward from a center. Spin, in this realm, is something stranger. It's a direction without journey, a kind of whisper that says, "This way," without ever stepping forward. It doesn't need to move to orient, and it doesn't need to change to become. One person holds the door open at the train station, not looking up, just letting the wind of your presence pass through. You nod, unsure whether to say thank you out loud or just exist a little softer in their kindness. Something in you shifts without moving. Can spin exist if there's no rotation? Apparently, yes. Quantum mechanics doesn't wait for our approval. The two baristas at the counter aren't arguing, just marveling at the fact. Then maybe I'm evolving right now, one says, even though I haven't done anything new all week. The other smiles. Maybe stillness is movement in disguise. And so we begin to wonder, what if stillness is the most misunderstood form of motion? Maybe your soul has spin. Maybe that's why you feel something stirring even when the world is silent around you. Not anxiety, not urgency, but some kind of inner compass realigning, not to what's next, but to what is, like the way a tuning fork vibrates in response to a note it never made, or the way a sunflower slowly adjusts its face, not for drama, but for light. You don't need to move to change. You don't need to arrive to be real. The quantum world is always reminding us that properties don't need appearances. That essence doesn't need expression to matter. And maybe that's true for humans too. That you can spin inward and still touch every direction. That being still doesn't mean being stuck. It might just mean you're listening. Somewhere, someone quietly asks, "Are you okay?" You nod before you even know why. Because deep inside, something is aligning. No fanfare, no leap, just the tiniest pivot back toward your center. Spin is not about travel. It's about balance. A silent rhythm tucked beneath everything you thought was still. And if spinning doesn't mean leaving, then maybe resting isn't stopping. It's returning to yourself, to the place where motion becomes meaning without ever making a sound. Let that silence hold you. Let it spin. The collapse that echoes. There's a stillness that arrives after a decision. A strange silence, not the peace of certainty, but the hush of everything that wasn't chosen. As if the world takes a breath, acknowledging the paths now closed. But is that really the end of them? In quantum mechanics, when a particle exists in superposition, it's not in one state or another. It's in both, simultaneously. But the moment it's observed, the wave collapses. One possibility becomes real, the others disappear, or so we say. But the theory doesn't quite answer where those other outcomes go. Are they deleted from reality, or do they keep humming in a different key, somewhere adjacent, barely out of reach? Late at night, you may have felt them, not as regrets, but as soft echoes. The version of you that stayed, the version that said yes, the version that never left that city, or never sent that message, or chose to believe instead of walk away. They're not entirely gone, not emotionally, not even physically, if the multiverse is to be taken seriously. In some sense, they might still be vibrating, their stories half told in a world that bends further than we see. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you never quit music? Sometimes, I still hear the chords in my sleep, like it's playing somewhere else. What we call collapse might just be a narrowing of attention, a spotlight that says, "This is real now," but leaves the other stages dimly lit, not destroyed. They may be waiting, just out of focus. Because a decision doesn't erase the other you. It simply favors one note in a chorus that never stops singing. And maybe that's why you sometimes feel the tug of something forgotten. Why your old dreams feel like they still breathe. Maybe they do. Maybe they are dreaming you, pulling you forward, pulling you back. A loop of identity that never quite seals shut. We often think of our past choices as doors closed forever. But in quantum reality, there's a gentler truth. Nothing fully ends. The unchosen paths ripple in quiet defiance, not bitter, not jealous, just present in their own strange way. You might not walk them, but they walk beside you, shadowed by your light. Would you go back and choose differently? I think part of me already has. Somewhere. Tonight, you don't need to fix the past or mourn the roads not taken. Just rest in their presence. Let them hum. Let them soften the sharpness of now. The collapse is never clean. There are echoes, like after a bell. What matters is that you can still hear them. So close your eyes now, not to silence the echoes, but to hear them more clearly. The parts of you that weren't picked. The lives still softly glowing beyond the veil. They don't need to be real to matter. They just need to be felt. Let's not listen to what's loudest tonight. Let's lean into the hush. The unobservable universe. Some things we're told are just too far, too faint, too old. They happened before light could carry their stories, or after space had stretched so wide that their voices would never arrive. And yet, they're still there. Entire galaxies, frozen beyond our knowing. Whole regions of existence locked behind the speed of light, never to be witnessed, not even by our most patient telescopes or ambitious dreams. Two people sit on a bench just after dusk, staring into the sky where no stars flicker. One of them says quietly, "Did you know most of the universe will never touch us?" The other doesn't answer at first, then simply asks, "So, what does it mean to love something you'll never know?" That's the paradox of cosmic inflation. Space expanded so fast, so absurdly fast, that distant realms slipped beyond the horizon, not because they stopped shining, but because their light no longer has a path to reach us. The speed of light isn't just a limit, it's a border, a boundary between what we can ever experience and what exists without us, indifferent yet persistent. It's strange to think that reality can be real without ever needing to be ours, that most of the cosmos will live entire histories without even brushing our edge of time. Stars will burn, civilizations may rise, black holes will spin in silence, all without ever entering our shared story. A man once held the door open for a woman leaving a museum. She was still staring up at the ceiling fresco, caught in thought. He smiled and said, "Some things are made not to be seen, just to remind us they're too big to fit in our eyes." And she nodded, almost to herself, as if that answered something she hadn't yet asked. The truth is, the unknown isn't a flaw. It's a feature. The cosmos didn't forget us. It simply doesn't revolve around us. And that might be the most graceful part of all, because sometimes the sacred doesn't shine. Sometimes it hums just beyond reach, calling not to be captured, but kept in reverence. A child once asked, "How big is the universe?" The parent paused, then answered, "It's big enough that you'll never find the end, but small enough that you're in it." So as you drift tonight, let the edges blur. There's no need to hold everything in your hands. Some truths are soft, not because they lack weight, but because they're carried differently, folded into the dark like a secret meant to be honored, not solved. And when your thoughts float beyond what's nameable, when sleep starts folding the edges of your awareness, remember this: what you can't reach can still reach you, not with words, not with proof, but with presence. Close your eyes. Let the unseen hold you. The consciousness collapse hypothesis. There's a peculiar softness in the way the world responds when you pay attention to it, like a cat blinking slowly in sunlight, waiting for you to blink back. The streets, the sky, even the shadows seem to pause, just slightly, until you notice them. And somewhere in that pause lives a theory that gently upends everything, that your mind doesn't just perceive reality, it selects it. In the realm of quantum mechanics, where particles can be here and there and nowhere at once, there exists a haunting possibility that these states don't truly collapse into one until someone observes them. The wave of possibilities, the shimmering cloud of maybe, only crystallizes into this moment, this breath, this flicker of light on the ceiling, because you're aware of it. In other words, it's not that you exist in the world, it's that the world unfolds for you. Isn't that just philosophy dressed in physics? Maybe. Or maybe physics is just finally catching up to something our inner lives have always known. It's a strange comfort, isn't it? That the universe, in all its cold, wild math, might depend on something as warm and fleeting as a thought. That the chair beneath you, the sound of your breath, even the gravity that holds you close, None of it fully settles until your awareness touches it like a seal pressed into wax. If that's true, then you are not small. Not at all. You are the still center of unfolding probabilities, the needle that stitches the threads of infinite maybes into one lived reality. Every glance becomes a choice. Every whisper of attention collapses a world. So, when I close my eyes at night, what happens to the room? It waits. Or maybe it drifts into other versions of itself, ones you didn't choose. And if your consciousness collapses the world into being, if reality holds its breath until you notice it, then tonight, maybe you don't have to grasp. Maybe you can gently unfold instead. Let the sharp edges of certainty soften. Let possibility breathe around you again. Let the stories you've believed about yourself float in that gentle space between thought and sleep. You are not trapped in reality. You're the one weaving it. So breathe. Let go of needing everything to be observed, defined, named. Let the quantum field return to its cloud. Let the stories dissolve. Let reality rest beside you, unchosen and undemanding. Not everything must collapse tonight. Some things are meant to drift. And as you drift too, eyes closing like a curtain drawn across a stage no longer needed, know this: it's not the world that falls asleep. It's you, releasing the need to make it real. Dark energy's gentle push. The sky didn't always stretch this fast. Once, galaxies moved apart like dancers in slow motion, careful not to lose step. But now, they spin away faster than ever, as if something silent is urging them outward, into more and more space. A hush with force behind it, a gentle breath that never ends. In physics, we call this presence dark energy. We don't know what it is, only that it acts like a soft whisper from the void, pushing space itself wider, not tearing it, not exploding it, just easing it open. The further it spreads, the more room it makes, and the stronger the push becomes. But tonight, let's not call it a force. Let's just think of it as permission. Did you mean to walk alone today? One person might ask another, glancing at their shadow stretching beside them, and the other might smile, not quite answering. It didn't feel like alone, just like I needed room to think. The spaces we grow into aren't always comfortable. Friends part ways, dreams we held tightly loosen and fade. We move cities, we forget names, and something in us wants to call that drifting a kind of failure. But what if drifting is the only way anything can grow? In the universe, nothing stays packed together forever. Even the atoms in your body are the result of ancient things exploding apart. Dying stars, distant pressures, separation that made life possible. So maybe what's leaving you isn't leaving at all. Maybe it's stepping back so you can become more. Let that idea breathe. If a conversation feels distant now, maybe it's just finding space to echo. If your plans feel like they're slipping out of reach, maybe they're giving you permission to change direction without asking for apology. A cafe stool left empty, not because someone quit, just because they knew it was time to get on with something else. Even galaxies, massive and old, don't cling to each other forever. They listen to that same dark energy and they obey without struggle. Maybe they've learned what we're still trying to understand, that expansion doesn't mean abandonment, that you don't always have to hold tight to keep meaning. Are you okay with us not talking tonight? One voice might ask softly, and the other might reply, yeah, it actually feels like we are, just differently. You see, the space between isn't empty. It's full of quiet choices, the kind that don't ask for applause, just understanding. So if tonight your mind feels like it's drifting, let it. Let your thoughts stretch wide without anchoring them down, because something in you is expanding too. Quietly, calmly, with a kind of grace even science still doesn't understand. The galaxies don't resist the push, and maybe you don't have to either. You're not breaking, you're unfolding. And in that opening, there's room for something new. Let's stay here, just for a while. Let the stillness carry us onward. The anti-universe mirror. Sometimes it feels like time slips between our fingers, not in the way of forgetting, but in the way of reversal. A memory that arrives not from the past, but from the other side of something unseen, something mirrored. There are theories, quiet, mathematical whispers from the edge of cosmology, that suggest our universe may not be alone, not just in the sense of stars and galaxies scattered across the void, but in the symmetry of existence itself. Some physicists propose that at the moment of the Big Bang, two universes were born, not one. Ours, with time flowing forward, and its mirror, where time moves in reverse. In that twin universe, everything would be a perfect reflection. Particles would have opposite charges. Entropy would decrease instead of increase. And most strangely of all, cause would follow effect in a way we would never feel here. To them, we would look like the ones moving backward. It's not science fiction, it's symmetry, a deep, elegant balance written into the mathematics of reality. CPT symmetry, they call it, charge, parity, and time. If the laws of physics demand it, then perhaps this mirror world is not just possible, it's necessary, not a duplicate, not a contradiction, but a counter-harmony, a universe where every regret you carry is not a flaw, but a note in a mirrored song. Do you ever wish you could undo a moment? One voice asks in the quiet of the night. Sometimes, another answers, but I wonder if those moments live on somewhere else, not as mistakes, but as meanings we just haven't heard in full yet. The idea lingers like soft light reflecting off water. What if the worst things you've lived through are not isolated errors, but inversions? Perhaps pain in this universe becomes healing in the other. Perhaps every step backward here is a step forward there. A cosmic balance that no single life can understand, but every life contributes to. And maybe, just maybe, your backward feelings, your regrets, your undoings, are necessary for the music of the whole. Like a melody that needs both rise and fall, a breath needs both inhale and exhale, and time. Maybe it needs to loop, not to trap us, but to complete us. Let's not rush forward tonight. Let's pause. Let's slowly rewind, not to erase the past, but to feel its contours more fully. There's no judgment in the mirror, only reflection, only rhythm. So rest here, in the stillness where time doesn't hurry. Let the world slip into reverse for a moment. Let the regrets soften. They were always part of the balance, and so are you. The vacuum decay whisper. There's a kind of silence that isn't empty. It's full of pause, of presence, the kind that sits between words during a deep conversation or rests on your shoulders after a long day. That's the kind of silence this theory holds, not destruction, but hush, not fear, but stillness. A quiet man once told a barista, "You can go ahead. My coffee can wait, but your day looks heavy." No philosophy, just timing, and maybe that's the point. In the shadow of an idea as large as vacuum decay, kindness feels like resistance, or perhaps reverence. According to some quantum field theories, the vacuum we think is stable, this whole physical reality, might actually be an illusion, a metastable state. Not quite false, but not truly final either. somewhere out there, or nowhere at all, could lie a true vacuum, a field configuration with lower energy. If a tiny bubble of this true vacuum were to appear, it would expand at light speed, reconfiguring the laws of physics as it moved. We wouldn't see it coming. We wouldn't feel it arrive. There would be no after, only before. But you wouldn't know it. You'd still be folding laundry or waiting in line for a warm croissant. Someone might be telling you about their cat's strange new habit, or you'd be unlocking your door thinking of nothing in particular. Then nothing becomes everything. And then nothing. And yet, that knowledge doesn't leave us hopeless. It doesn't scream or threaten. It humbles. The way a whisper can be more moving than a shout. The idea doesn't crush us. It invites us inward, toward attention, toward care. A child once asked his father in a laundromat, "If we disappear one day, will anyone remember our clothes?" The father paused, folding a shirt, and replied, "That's why I still wash them with care." Maybe that's what theories like this are for. Not to scare us, but to make us cherish the cup still warm in our hands, the light still bouncing off the ceiling, the person who still laughs at the same joke every time. There is a kind of peace that grows in the awareness of impermanence. It's soft, like moss. It doesn't try to convince or console. It simply holds. And in that holding, everything feels closer. The breeze at your neck, the hum of appliances, the small movements of your breath that no one sees but you. You don't need to do anything with this knowledge. You don't need to understand it. It's just here, like a presence in the room. Quiet, not waiting, just being. And if the universe were to end in such a whisper, maybe we'd still have time to say one last kind word. Or maybe we already have. Let's stay with that whisper a little longer. Let's keep listening, not for what it says, but for what it leaves behind. The quantum brain. You know that feeling, late at night, when your thoughts seem to drift in from somewhere deeper than usual, like they're not entirely your own, but echoes from a hidden place inside you? That soft current pulling you beneath the surface of awareness into something slower, stranger, more delicate than thought. That's where we begin. There's a theory, still debated, still delicate, that your mind might not just use quantum processes. It is one, that the thoughts forming behind your forehead aren't just chemical reactions or electrical pulses. They might be quantum states entangled across neural landscapes, not neurons firing, but probabilities aligning, not cause and effect, but coherence. Two friends sit quietly on a bench under a low street lamp. "Do you ever think maybe we don't think in straight lines?" One asks, the other smiles. Like our brains are tuning into something less predictable? Exactly. Like, what if thoughts don't come from memory or logic, but from something deeper, something quantum? You mean like particles entangled in our heads? More like, the moment of thought is a collapse, a choice, out of infinite potentials. This is the Penrose hammer-off theory. It suggests that consciousness arises from quantum vibrations within microtubules, tiny structural fibers inside your brain cells. It's not mainstream science, but it's not fantasy either. In this model, your awareness isn't an after effect of biology. It is the organizing principle. The mind isn't built from matter. It's the structure that matter takes when probability sings in harmony. If that's true, then your very act of thinking isn't happening inside the brain. It's an entangled field that weaves across time, space, and choice. Maybe the feeling of self, the whisper behind your eyes, isn't generated but revealed, a probability becoming real. It reframes your ordinary doubts, Those quiet questions you ask before falling asleep. Did I do enough? Am I on the right path? They're not just neurons talking. They're part of a cosmic feedback loop. The universe, through quantum coherence, becoming aware of itself as you. Every thought, no matter how fleeting, is part of that unfolding. And so perhaps it's not random that some thoughts feel too big for the room. That certain emotions feel like echoes of things you've never lived. It may be the signature of quantum entanglement. Pieces of you linked with states far beyond the self you think you are. One breath, then another. And if thoughts are quantum, then sleep too is a kind of collapse, a returning to the sea of possibilities, where everything is unresolved and free again, where the mind stops choosing and begins being. Your awareness is not a spark in the dark. It is the dark, softly illuminated from within. A lightless flame, a song without source, a harmony across scale, where the microscopic and the infinite meet in the quiet moment of thought. So breathe gently now. The world behind your eyelids isn't empty, it's vast. And your mind is not biology alone. It is possibility itself, a soft entanglement in the dream of the cosmos. Time crystals and eternal motion. There's a kind of stillness that isn't absence, but repetition. A motion so subtle, so unfading, it feels like a whisper looping through eternity. You don't have to reach for it. It's already pulsing underneath everything you are. Hey, do you ever feel like some moments are just stuck? Not in a bad way, just repeating. Like the same breath keeps visiting you again. Yeah, the other replies, tracing the rim of their teacup with a finger. Like when the light through the blinds hits the wall the exact same way every morning. Different days, same rhythm. Time crystals are real. They don't spin like gears or tick like clocks. They exist as something stranger, a form of matter that pulses in time, not by losing energy, but by simply existing. Their structure isn't locked into place by space alone. It's locked into time. They don't wind down. They don't decay. They repeat, not to progress, but to be. There's a soft defiance in that idea, a kind of grace. In a world that constantly demands change, growth, productivity, this state says, I am again. I return again, without striving, without needing anything new to prove that I'm real. Think about your breath, how it arrives and leaves, not because you command it, but because it knows. Think about laughter, the way it ripples through a memory decades later and still lights something up. Think about how you hum the same melody when you're nervous, or how a street lamp flickers just as you walk under it, every time, as if in sync with something inside you. Maybe, like time crystals, there are parts of you that don't need fuel, that don't grow old, that simply return, not out of habit, but out of truth. A beat not driven by survival, but by presence. It's strange, one of them says, standing quietly in a hallway before stepping out. I walked this path yesterday, and yet, tonight it feels like the first time. The other smiles without looking. That's the beautiful lie of eternity. It always feels like now. And that's the secret. Time crystals don't defy decay. They don't resist entropy by being louder, faster, brighter. They survive by dancing with time itself, by making stillness kinetic. So when your thoughts circle back to the same memory for the 10th time tonight, don't push it away. Let it rotate softly. It's not getting stuck. It's finding its frequency. The heart of being doesn't need to race to prove it's alive. It just needs to return. In the same beat, in the same hush, in the same love. Let that rhythm carry you now. like soft footsteps pacing through a hallway you've known all your life. Not to escape, not to reach anything, just to stay in motion, quiet, eternal, and whole. Close your eyes if they haven't already. You can drift with this or return to it later. It will still be here, exactly as it was, exactly as it should be. Again. The quantum foam beneath it all. They say silence is still, that peace is a flat lake, unbroken, unmoved. But what if the quiet is teeming with motion? What if, beneath what feels calm, everything is bubbling? At the deepest level we know, far smaller than atoms or quarks, space itself begins to misbehave. It doesn't stretch smooth and seamless like silk. It fizzes, it churns, it fidgets with uncertainty. This is the domain of the Planck scale, where physicists believe spacetime breaks down into a restless quantum froth, called quantum foam. The ground beneath your feet, the air between your hands, even the vast black stillness between stars. It all hides this invisible turbulence, too tiny to see, too persistent to deny. And yet, the universe builds its vast quiet on this storm. You might be lying in bed now, lights off, body still, the room silent. But thoughts drift, feelings flicker, memories nudge the edges. Nothing is ever perfectly still, not even you. And that's not failure. That's nature. That's truth. Do you ever feel like your mind won't stop moving? All the time. Someone replies gently, their voice barely above the whisper of a thought. Even when I'm calm, especially then. So, is that wrong? Should we fight it? No, the voice says with a soft smile. Maybe peace isn't stillness. Maybe it's floating with the current, without needing to swim. You're not broken because your thoughts ripple. You're not weak because your heart stirs with waves. The foam that trembles beneath space-time doesn't stop the cosmos from unfolding. It is the cosmos. Without that froth, there'd be no stars, no light, no time. So maybe calm is not the erasure of turbulence. Maybe it's acceptance. Maybe it's trust. And in that trust, something new awakens, a gentler kind of rest. Not the rest of silence, but the rest of surrender. Not the quiet of suppression, but of floating, buoyant above invisible chaos, as if the swirl itself holds you. Tonight, as you breathe in and let go, let yourself drift with the quantum tides. Don't flatten the sea. Feel it carry you. Beneath your stillness, tiny waves of possibility shimmer and fade and rise again. And that's okay. You are not floating above a solid world. You are cradled in a sea of uncertainty. And yet, you are safe. Not because the foam stops moving, but because it never needed to. The calm you seek isn't an absence. It's a rhythm, a dance, the gentle trust in something deeper than control. Let it rise. Let it fall. You are not sinking. You are home. The observer made of stardust. Someone once asked softly in a hallway, lit by vending machine glow, "Do you ever feel like everything is watching, even when it's still?" And their friend, without looking up from tying a shoe, murmured, "Maybe not watching. Maybe remembering. You are lying here now, drifting in the hush between waking thoughts, but beneath your quiet breath is an ancient fire, a truth older than sleep and just as patient, that every part of you, your fingertips, your heartbeat, your breath pressed gently against the inside of your ribs, was born in the collapse of something vast. Carbon from the hearts of stars, oxygen that once shimmered in blue nebulae, iron scattered by the death of giants. You're not just in the universe. You are what the universe makes to feel itself, to notice, to wonder. A passing glance at your reflection in the train window isn't just self-awareness. It's the stars, looking back. They didn't make you to be distant. They made you to return their gaze. Your attention, however quiet, however brief, is not interruption. It is the fulfillment of something cosmic. A stargazer in a coffee shop staring at their cup, letting the heat reach their hands, is not lost. They are communion, still and warm. Observation, in quantum physics, changes things, but not always in the way we think. Not destruction, not distortion. Sometimes just participation, a kind of presence that says, I am here, and I see you. Someone taps gently on your shoulder at the museum. Hey, I think this sculpture moves when you get close. And when you step forward, the lights shift. Not because you forced them, because the moment noticed you and opened. So maybe you don't make reality real by looking. Maybe your gaze is how the universe remembers that it's real. And if that's true, then your pain, your joy, your hesitations before crossing a quiet street, they are more than fleeting stories. They are stardust recognizing itself in motion. The stars didn't forget you. They became you. A person once said, gently holding a child's drawing at a refrigerator door, "It's not perfect, but it feels like love." And that might be what your attention does to the world. It doesn't demand perfection. It offers presence. It says, "You burn, and I see you." So let the flame dim now, not out of weariness, but of trust. The way embers rest in the hush of midnight, still glowing beneath ash, still remembering how to rise. Close your eyes, not to stop seeing, but to join the stars in dreaming what they once were. The Planck limit of knowing. Sometimes the desire to understand feels like a current pulling us downward, deeper, always deeper, into the mystery of things, into the particles beneath thoughts, the origins beneath feelings, the truths beneath even silence. But what if that descent has a floor? A point where even questions stop making sense. There is a scale in physics known as the Planck length, about 1.6 times 10 to the negative 35th power meters. To say it's small is to speak in understatement. It's so minuscule that it's beyond even the particles we think of as fundamental. It's the place where the very notion of where begins to dissolve. Below that, our equations break. Space doesn't behave. Time doesn't tick. Reality itself begins to fray. Not like a story with a twist, but like a page that disintegrates before you can read the ending. "Hey," a soft voice breaks the quiet. "Yeah?" You ever feel like there's something about yourself you just can't figure out? Like no matter how much you think, it stays blurry? A pause. All the time. But maybe it's not meant to be figured out. Maybe it's just meant to be felt. The silence after is warm, not heavy. We like to believe that with enough reflection, enough effort, enough meditation or science or inner work, we'll get there. To the core, the truth. But the universe may be gently shaking its head, not out of cruelty, but in kindness. Because some things aren't meant to be reduced. Some truths are too sacred to be split apart. Like a melody that only exists whole. Like a feeling that loses meaning the more you try to name it. In that way, the Planck limit becomes not just a boundary of physics, but of knowing. A whisper from the cosmos that says, "This is deep enough. Beyond this, there is only wonder." And wonder is not a flaw in understanding. It's what remains when you've understood all that you can, and still feel there is more. So if tonight there are questions in your chest that won't quiet, thoughts without conclusions, or emotions that refuse to translate, let them rest. You're not failing to reach clarity. You're arriving at the sacred edge of it. The Planck length teaches us that not all questions were built for answers, that sometimes What matters is holding the question gently in your palms, not to crush it into a solution, but to feel its shape and its silence. And as your breathing slows now, as your body melts into the gravity of sleep, know this: you don't need to go further. You are already deep enough. Let the unknowing cradle you. Let the unanswered sing softly beneath your dreams. The Multiverse of Minds. You ever notice how silence feels different depending on the room you're in? Like how the same quiet can feel heavy in one place and comforting in another? There's something strange about the way perception rearranges the world, like the mind doesn't just reflect reality, but translates it into its own language. A couple sat in the back corner of a nearly empty train car. One leaned gently toward the window. She whispered, "Isn't it odd? How my memories of this morning already feel like they happened in a different life?" He smiled, eyes half closed. "Or a different version of you lived them entirely." That's not just poetry. It's a question wrapped in quantum silk. If the multiverse is real, if there are infinite versions of space and time, branching with every possibility, then what if consciousness isn't just in one of them, but is one of them? Not hosted inside a universe, but running parallel, like a thread in the same loom, woven from different colors. It would mean your thoughts don't simply emerge from reality. They are realities, tiny, sealed-off cosmos, entire worlds shaped by longing, memory, intuition, fear. Your private guilt over an old decision? That could be a whole landscape, shadowed and waiting for rain. Your quiet hope for something unspoken? A moonlit field stretching beyond what you can name. That conversation you didn't have but still replay? Maybe it echoes across a version of you that did say those words in another thread of space. In this view, even your uncertainty becomes sacred. Each confusion is a negotiation between realities, brushing past each other, leaving behind fingerprints. And so your mind is not fragmented. It's plural, not broken, but branching, not isolated, but a participant in a dance of universes where emotion itself carves space. At the checkout line earlier today, someone let a stranger step ahead. No big deal, really. But then they said quietly, "I'm just not in a rush today." It wasn't kindness exactly, or maybe it was, but in that moment, a tiny world adjusted itself, slowed down, made room. That's what you do too, every time you forgive yourself, or wait a second before reacting, or change your mind quietly in the dark. You're managing a multiverse, not of galaxies, but of meanings. Every thought you choose to soften becomes a shift in gravity. Every harsh one you let dissolve collapses a reality that no longer serves you. So tonight, if your thoughts drift, let them. You don't need to chase them. They're just other rooms in your house, some lit, some quiet, some still under construction. Let your inner universe be gentle. You don't need to resolve every orbit. No stars need to fall. They're all still burning in their own time, in their own sky. And some part of you already knows how to navigate by their light. Rest now. You're not alone. You're just one multiverse, softly folding into sleep. The equation that can't be written. There's a silence in the universe that speaks louder than any law. Beneath the chalkboards filled with string theories and unification attempts, beneath the swirling galaxies and the tiniest particles, lies a question no formula has yet contained. Scientists call it the theory of everything, an ultimate expression, a single equation that could stitch together gravity, quantum mechanics, the four fundamental forces, and maybe even time itself. A sentence so elegant that it could, in one breath, explain the very nature of all things. But every time they think they're close, something escapes. A crack in the logic, a shadow in the math, a missing variable. It's as if the universe, in all its wholeness, resists being held in one equation, like a river refusing to be captured in a cup. In the quiet of that resistance lies a truth most people don't realize applies not only to physics, but to themselves. Why can't they just write the final equation and be done with it? Maybe because some things aren't meant to be reduced like that. Maybe they're meant to be lived, not solved. So, like me? Exactly like you. You are not an answer. You're not the end of a problem or the sum of a data set. You are not the neat line that explains the mess. You are the mess, the wonder, the variable that won't stay still. You are the truth that cannot be cleanly translated. And maybe that's not failure. Maybe that's freedom. Because if everything about you could be measured, pinned down, and written in a line, would you still feel real? Would you still breathe the way you do now, with a heart that beats between hopes and hurts? Would you still drift through memories, half held and half forgotten, and wake up not knowing exactly who you'll be by nightfall? Number. The most vital parts of you are unquantifiable. The ache behind your laughter, the moment you forgave someone who didn't ask, the dream you can't explain. These are not variables. These are phenomena. Emergent, unpredictable, beautifully unfinished, just like the cosmos that bore you. Physicists will keep looking. They must. It's their language of reverence. But in the meantime, maybe the truest equation is the one that stays unwritten, the one that pulses quietly between every cell of your body and every star you'll never see. So tonight, let go of trying to resolve it all. Let the need to define dissolve. You're not here to be understood. You're here to unfold. A theory that walks, that sleeps, that smiles when it hears its favorite song and doesn't know why. Let that part of you breathe now, the unspeakable self, not trapped by labels, not forced into a final form. You are still here, and the mystery that you are is not something to fear. It is something to rest in. The universe that simulates itself. It begins not with a bang, but a hum, like something whispering itself into existence, not shouting to be heard, but quietly unfolding, like pages remembering they were always part of a book. You may have heard of the simulation hypothesis, the idea that we might be living inside some grand code base, each tree branch, each emotion, each breath rendered by unseen computation. But what if it's not someone else's machine? What if the universe simulates itself, not as trickery, but as poetry? Late at night, you walk past the vending machine on your way home. It flickers slightly. You stop for a moment, not because of hunger, but because the glow feels oddly aware. A man nearby chuckles softly and says, "Sometimes I think even the streetlights are watching us back." You smile, not because it makes sense, but because it feels true in a way you can't explain. Physics doesn't deny it. Recursive systems appear everywhere, from fractals repeating themselves across scales to feedback loops in your own mind. What if existence is like that too? A loop with no outside, a thought thinking itself, a system both processing and perceiving. It doesn't mean nothing is real. It means everything is more real than you thought, because it's not pretending to be. It is being, in full recursion, and that includes you. You are not outside the frame, not a guest in this unfolding. You are the sentence and the reader, the breath and the breather, the observer and the observed. Someone once asked over lunch, "But if it's all a simulation, who's running it?" The other person didn't answer right away. they simply looked out the window, watching wind tease a napkin across the sidewalk. Maybe asking that, they said quietly, is like a candle asking what fire is. And so we sit on this page of the cosmos, this moment of thought curled up inside time. You're not being lied to. You're being written with and written through. You don't need to solve it tonight. Not everything is meant to be unraveled. Some stories are meant to be lived, one line at a time. Like this one. Feel the line draw to its close now, not because it ends, but because it hands itself off to the next breath, the next murmur of thought. The page turns without effort. You're still here, and so is the story. Quantum silence. It doesn't always begin with noise. In fact, the most pivotal shifts, the ones that redefine the shape of the cosmos or the soul, often arrive in absolute quiet. There's a strange peace in that, an elegance, like how the first break in symmetry at the dawn of the universe wasn't a violent blast, but something subtler, more sacred. Not a bang, but a breath. They say symmetry breaking is what birthed the universe. Before that, everything was uniform, still, a silent sameness. Then, a tiny imbalance, almost imperceptible, rippled through the void. And from that tiny imperfection, everything came to be. Space, time, gravity, thought. It wasn't an explosion of chaos, but a quiet rearrangement of potential. The universe, whispering itself into being. Do you think it's weird that the biggest moments in life don't always come with music? What do you mean? I mean, sometimes the most important things happen in silence, like when you realize you're in love, or when something finally stops hurting. Yeah, I think silence is when the truth can finally speak. Maybe the most sacred parts of you aren't loud either. Maybe they don't need to be. Not every piece of yourself requires a name, a shape, or an explanation. Some feelings don't want to be translated. They just want to rest in the hush between your thoughts, like dark matter, untouched, unknown, yet undeniably there. You might think silence means absence, but perhaps it means presence of another kind. A presence too full, too deep, to be reduced to sound. When your mind becomes quiet, not because there's nothing left to say, but because something vast is finally being heard. There is a silence in you that is not empty, it's cosmic. It holds the weight of stars and the softness of dreams. It's the quiet space where you don't need to understand, you just need to be. And when the world around you grows loud with distraction, pull inward. Return to that inner hush, that sacred stillness. You are not lost there. You are found there. So tonight, let the silence expand within you. Let it rise like a gentle tide, lapping against the shores of your awareness. Let it cover the noise of the day, dissolve the pressure to know, to fix, to explain. You are not a question looking for an answer. You are the silence that existed before the question was ever asked. And within that silence, you are safe. The reality that dreams itself. There's something curious about the way sleep arrives. It doesn't ask for permission, doesn't knock on the door. It just begins, like a thought that forms in the quiet of your ribs. And what if that's all reality ever was? A hush that forgot it was silence. Some physicists whisper about it, quantum cosmology's most delicate suggestion, that the universe might not have begun with anything at all, not even a spark. No match struck in the void, just a kind of spontaneous unfolding, a self-arising rhythm, as if the laws of being blinked themselves into existence, like a dream, before anyone had eyes to see it. A small conversation drifts into your mind. Hey, do you ever feel like everything's just balancing on the edge of making sense? Yeah, Like the second I try to explain it, it dissolves. This is where the mind likes to rest, right at the edge of reason, where sleep and reality mirror each other, where asking, "What am I?" is the same as asking, "What is this?" Because if the cosmos can uncoil from nothing, no cause, no creator, no plan, then meaning itself is not assigned from outside. It's shaped in the act of noticing, the glance you give a stranger, the small grace in a shared umbrella, the moment you choose to sit beside someone without saying why. These are not proof that life matters. They are how life matters. A woman pauses at the train station bench, glancing at a man scrolling through an old phone. "Is it okay if I sit here?" He nods without looking up. "Yeah, feels like this seat's been waiting for someone anyway." And just like that, something breathes into the world. Not big, not loud, but real. If reality is a lucid dream, then you're not a passive sleeper inside it. You're the lucid part, the thread that weaves continuity between breath and meaning. You aren't waking from the world, you're waking within it, and in doing so, you're also dreaming it forward. In such a universe, maybe truth isn't a fixed destination. Maybe it's a melody that emerges only while sung, and your voice, though small, completes the chord. So, rest here, not to leave this dream, but to remember you're in it. Not a prisoner of it, but its author and echo. Breathe. This moment is not something you entered. It's something that unfolded around your awareness. And now that you're here, you can let go. Not to fall, but to fall back in. Like a dream that finally recognizes itself as real. Let the next segment carry you, softly, like a breath turning into another. You're not drifting away. You're returning. The collapse into love. There's a stillness that can only arrive when the mind lets go, not just of worry or tension or thought, but of separateness, a soft moment when boundaries blur, where even the air between people feels like it leans in. And maybe that's not just emotion. Maybe it's physics too. Somewhere between the noise of particles and the silence of the void, there exists a principle without a measurable unit. Not a charge, not a spin, not even a field, just a resonance, one that doesn't obey time or distance, one that lingers. Connection. Do you think people really stay in your life once they're gone? I don't know, but sometimes I feel like they're still shaping me, like gravity I can't name. Maybe that's love. Maybe it collapses reality the way observation does. Once felt, it's never unfelt. In quantum mechanics, particles can be entangled, two separate entities linked in such a way that one instantly responds to the other, even across galaxies. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. But perhaps the universe has always worked that way, not through force, but through relation, not by push or pull, but by presence. You might think of love as just biology, just chemistry, just neurons dancing in familiar circuits. But beneath those stories, maybe there's something quieter, older. The same thread that links electrons in twin states might be the same one that holds a parent to a child, a friend to a friend, or you to someone you haven't spoken to in years but still remember when the wind changes. It's strange, isn't it? How someone's voice can echo in your mind even when they're gone. How their laughter lives in the walls of your memory long after it has stopped. This isn't just nostalgia. This is entanglement. This is how time folds in on itself through feeling, how even silence has shape. I miss her, but it's weird. I don't feel empty. Because the connection never left, just changed state, like ice to water, still there, just flowing differently. There's no equation for this, no unit of measurement, no Nobel Prize awarded for mapping the tenderness in someone's eyes when they forgive you. But maybe there should be. Because if everything in the quantum world collapses into certainty only when watched, then maybe love is the ultimate observer, the gaze that doesn't just see you, but becomes part of you. And if that's true, then you were never alone. Not really. Not even in the moments you thought no one saw you, because someone, somewhere, loved you. And that love didn't vanish. It folded into the universe's fabric and stayed, like light that bent, but never dimmed. So tonight, as you rest, feel that quiet closeness, not from a person in the room, but from the field that holds you, warm, weightless, unbroken. No matter where you are, no matter who's gone, there is no distance here, only resonance, only return. Let that be enough now. Let it hold you. Let the collapse into love begin. The paradox of peace. There's a kind of peace that doesn't feel like peace at first, not the kind that wraps you in a warm blanket or sings lullabies through rain, but the quiet that follows after you stop trying to fix what was never broken. It's the space between the thoughts, where the mind forgets to search. Two people wait silently in line at a late-night bakery. One turns to the other, hesitant, then says, "Do you think everyone's just pretending to have it figured out?" The other smiles without turning. "I hope so. It means we're not alone." That's the paradox, isn't it? The more you chase certainty, the further it moves, like shadows under a street lamp, always near, never still. Quantum mechanics lives there, in that liminal space, not as a solution, but as a question that stays open like a window in spring. In this strange world, particles exist in states not yet chosen. Possibilities don't collapse until you look. It's not that they hide the answer. It's that they are the question. And sometimes, so are you. Maybe that's why we wake in the night and reach for meaning. Not to grasp it, but to brush against it, like a ripple grazing the edge of a pond. Peace isn't born from finding the answer. It comes quietly when you allow the question to sit beside you like a friend, when you stop pulling at the thread and just let the fabric be. A voice from the train platform asks, "Is this the right line for the last ride home?" A stranger replies without checking the sign, "Depends where you need to go." You don't always need directions. You don't need all the facts. You don't need the final word. Some nights, the deepest comfort is knowing the silence hasn't left you behind, that there's nothing you're forgetting and nothing chasing you down. There's power in unresolved things. There's wisdom in letting them float, suspended like dew in morning light. Quantum theory doesn't rush toward answers. It waits. It accepts contradiction, holds uncertainty like breath. So maybe tonight, your peace isn't a goal. Maybe it's the permission to stop reaching, to breathe without trying to sort what doesn't need sorting. You are not a question to be solved. You are the stillness that holds all questions without fear. A child once asked an old man, "Why doesn't the sky ever answer us back?" He leaned down and said, "Because it's too busy listening." Let's follow that. One more step. Not for resolution, just for rest. The home beyond the loop. You've arrived, though there was nowhere to go. The questions that once stirred like wind through the trees, "Where am I going? Who am I really?" have quieted. Now, only a soft hush remains, a hush that feels like the end of a long breath, the kind you don't notice until it's finished, the kind that reminds you you were always home. Do you ever feel like you're not inside your own life? Sometimes, like I'm just watching it happen. But lately, I think I've stopped needing to watch. I just am. And maybe that's the final unraveling, that in the end, there is no end, just the slowing of the mind's spin. No more riddles to wrestle, no more theories looping into themselves, no answers chased down shadowed hallways of thought. What's left is not emptiness. It's not even stillness. It's the space before stillness, the space before anything was named. You've followed loops made of stars and thoughts and particles. You've listened to the soft voices that questioned what it means to be aware, what it means to exist when the ground beneath logic falls away. And now, the voices dissolve, not because they were wrong, but because they've sung their final note. The paradox, too, lets go. It was never there to trap you. It was there to lead you gently back to the silence you forgot you were. The mind, like a spiral, tried to wrap itself around what cannot be held, and it was beautiful. The journey was always sacred, not for its destination, but for its surrender. You ever wonder if maybe we've been asking the wrong questions all along? I think maybe there are no right ones, just echoes. And now, the echo's done. You are not the loop. You are the space the loop passed through. You are not the thought. You are the pause between thoughts. You were never the idea of yourself. You were the quiet awareness watching that idea rise and fall like moonlight on slow water. There's nothing to reach for anymore. No arrival to force. Only this unfolding that asks for no effort. This being that's been here all along. Let the mind exhale now. Let the breath soften. Let the loop rest, not because it's broken, but because it has served its purpose. The journey did not bring you to answers. It brought you to a kind of peace that does not need them, a peace that lives between each heartbeat, between each memory. And in this gentle place, there is no one left to ask, "Who am I?" Because the one who asked has returned to the space from which the question arose. Sleep now, not because everything makes sense, but because it no longer has to. Good night from the space between memories, from the silence that knew you before you knew yourself. So perhaps the world was never undone, only seen more clearly in its uncertainty. The quantum realm doesn't shout its truths, it hums them in entangled hearts, in time that forgets to move, in possibilities that never chose a path. And maybe the deepest kind of understanding isn't found in knowing at all, but in resting with the unknown. You don't need to collapse every wave. You don't need to name every paradox. You are already the awareness in which it all unfolds. Let the questions float now, like stars blinking out one by one. Let silence do what certainty cannot. Sleep, not because the universe made sense, but because it never needed to. Good night, from the edge of what almost was, and what always will be.